There are moments when the world holds its breath, when everything you thought you knew about power, about weakness, about the natural order of things, shatters like glass beneath an unstoppable force. On the blood-soaked clearing of Thornfield Valley, beneath a sky choked with smoke and the howls of the dying, such a moment crystallized around a single figure who should not have survived, yet refused to fall. Aaron Boone stood alone among carnage that spoke of battles fought by armies, not individuals. Around her lay the twisted bodies of rogues, 30 of them, their dark blood steaming against earth that had been peaceful territory mere minutes before. She was an Omega, the weakest designation in werewolf hierarchy, the wolves others protected, never the ones who fought. But the Alpha King and his elite warriors, arriving to witness the final moments of her impossible stand, would see something that defied every law they understood about pack dynamics and supernatural limitation. They would see an Omega who fought like an Alpha while bearing wounds that should have killed her 10 times over. And the Alpha King would feel something slam into his chest with the force of destiny itself, a recognition that would shatter his certainty about everything he thought he knew. Before we begin, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1. The Impossible Omega. The morning had started with such promise. Erin had been gathering medicinal herbs near the border of Crescent Moon territory, her Omega duties keeping her far from the pack center where Alphas and Betas conducted important business. It was peaceful work that she'd grown to appreciate. The solitude, the quiet, the absence of pitying looks or dismissive comments about her weakness. Being an Omega meant being invisible, meant being safe, until the rogues came. The first warning had been the scent, wrong, twisted, carrying the taint of madness that marked wolves who'd abandoned pack bonds and surrendered to their base instincts. Erin had frozen, her wolf whimpering in fear as training kicked in. Run, hide, survive. Omegas don't fight. Omegas can't fight. But there had been children playing by the stream less than a mile away. She'd heard their laughter on the wind just moments before. And when the rogues had poured from the tree line, more than she could count, their eyes burning with bloodlust, she'd realized they were heading straight for those children. That's when something inside her had snapped. Now 40 minutes later, Erin stood in the center of devastation that shouldn't exist. Her clothes were shredded, her skin marked with wounds that blazed with pain, yet somehow continued to allow movement. Her claws, longer and sharper than any Omega should be, dripped with blood that wasn't entirely hers. The last rogue circled her warily, its massive form covered in scars that spoke of countless kills. It had watched her destroy its packmates with increasing caution, and now it studied her with intelligence that was unusual for rogues who'd supposedly lost all rational thought. "You should be dead," its body language seemed to say. "What are you?" Erin didn't have an answer. She didn't understand what was happening, why her body moved with speed she'd never possessed, why her wolf, usually so timid, so small, had surged forward with power that burned through her veins like liquid fire. All she knew was that she couldn't stop. Not yet, not while threat remained. The rogue lunged. Erin's wolf took over completely. She dropped beneath its attack, claws extending to open its belly as it passed overhead. The creature crashed to the ground, thrashing once before going still. 30. She'd killed 30 rogues. Impossible. The voice in her head sounded like her wolf, but stronger, more certain than she'd ever heard it. Not impossible. Finally, awake. Before Erin could process those cryptic words, new sounds reached her through the ringing in her ears, pounding hoofbeats, the thunderous approach of multiple wolves running in perfect coordination, and beneath it all, a presence that made her wolf suddenly go very, very still. Alpha. Not just any alpha. This was power on a scale she'd never experienced, authority that pressed against her consciousness like a physical weight, making her want to bare her throat in submission despite never having met whoever was approaching. Through the smoke and carnage, shapes emerged. Wolves first, massive creatures that dwarfed even the rogues she'd just killed, their fur gleaming with health and their eyes burning with intelligence that marked them as elite warriors. They moved as one unit, their coordination speaking of years fighting together. Then they shifted. Erin had seen plenty of shifts in her life, but nothing like this. These wolves transformed with fluid grace that made the process look effortless, their human forms appearing in heartbeats rather than the painful minutes most wolves required. They were all tall, powerfully built, marked with the scars and tattoos that indicated veteran soldiers. But it was the man at their center who made Erin's breath catch. He stood at least 6'4", his bare chest marked with intricate tattoos that identified him even before she registered the sheer power radiating from his frame. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, and eyes the color of molten amber fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. King Adrian Robertson, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the most powerful wolf alive, and he was staring at her like she'd just shattered his understanding of reality. Adrian couldn't breathe. His wolf was going absolutely insane inside his chest, throwing itself against his control with a desperation he'd never experienced. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to close the distance between himself and the blood-soaked Omega standing in the center of 30 dead rogues. "Mate!" his wolf howled. "Mate! Mate! Mate!" But that was impossible. She was an Omega. He could scent it on her despite the blood and smoke, that distinctive sweetness that marked the weakest wolves in pack hierarchy. Omegas were precious, protected, carefully guarded, because their wolves barely surpassed human strength. They couldn't fight. Their bodies weren't built for combat. Any alpha could overpower them with minimal effort. Yet this Omega had just destroyed 30 rogues single-handedly. "Sire," said Nate Barton, his beta and closest friend, voice tight with shock, "are you seeing what I'm seeing?" "I see it," Adrian managed, though his voice came out rougher than intended. His wolf was pushing forward, demanding he shift. "Claim, mark." He forced the instinct down with brutal mental discipline. "Stanley," he said to his head warrior. "Assessment." Stanley Douglas moved forward cautiously, his experienced gaze sweeping the carnage. After a moment, he returned, his expression troubled. "All rogues dead, Your Majesty. Kill strikes are clean. Throat slashes, disembowelments, severed spines. The efficiency suggests trained combat experience and strength that—" He hesitated. "Strength that shouldn't be possible for an Omega." "Shouldn't be possible?" Nate repeated. "Stanley, it's not possible. An Omega's wolf is barely stronger than a human. These rogues would have torn her apart in seconds." "And yet she stands while they lie dead," Adrian said quietly, his eyes never leaving the Omega's face. She was beautiful, despite the blood and exhaustion. Long dark hair matted with gore, brown skin marked with wounds that should have killed her, brown eyes that watched them with wariness rather than the automatic submission most Omegas displayed toward alpha authority. And her scent. Gods, her scent was driving him insane. Sweet like honey and wildflowers, but underneath it something else. Something that called to every predatory instinct he possessed, while simultaneously making his wolf want to wrap around her and never let go. "Your Majesty," said another voice. Eric Alexander, his tracker, emerged from examining the perimeter. The rogues came from the Deadlands. Their scent markers indicate they've been corrupted by something beyond normal rogue madness. And, he paused, they were hunting specifically. This wasn't random violence. "Hunting what?" Adrian demanded. Eric's gaze flicked to the Omega. "Based on their approach pattern, they were hunting her." The words sent ice through Adrian's veins. Before he could respond, the Omega swayed on her feet. His wolf lunged forward, and Adrian moved before conscious thought could stop him. He crossed the distance in a heartbeat, catching her as her legs gave out. The moment his skin touched hers, electricity shot through his entire body, the mate bond slamming into place with undeniable force. "Mine," his wolf snarled possessively. "Ours. Protect. Claim. Mine." The Omega's eyes widened, her wolf clearly sensing the bond as well. "No," she whispered. "That's not... I'm just an Omega. You can't... What's your name?" Adrian heard himself demand, his voice coming out rough with barely controlled wolf. "Aaron," she managed. "Aaron Boone. I'm from Crescent Moon Pack. I'm nobody important. I shouldn't even be..." She was babbling from shock and blood loss, her body trembling despite the unnatural strength that had sustained her through impossible combat. Adrian could feel her wounds now, could sense how close she was to complete collapse. "Nate," he said without looking away from her face. "Get the healer, now." "Your Majesty, bringing an unknown Omega to Pack territory, now!" Adrian snarled, his alpha command brooking no argument. Nate took off running. Adrian looked down at the woman in his arms. His mate, his wolf insisted, though that shouldn't be possible, and felt his entire world tilt on its axis. "You're coming with me, Omega, and you're going to explain exactly what you are." "I'm nobody," Erin whispered, her eyes starting to glaze with shock. "Just an Omega, just..." She went limp in his arms. Adrian caught her fully, cradling her against his chest as his wolf howled with protective fury. Around him, his warriors stood in shocked silence, clearly struggling to process what they'd witnessed. Stanley approached carefully. "Your Majesty, what do you want us to do?" Adrian looked at the 30 dead rogues, then at the impossibly powerful Omega in his arms. An Omega who fought like royalty. An Omega who the rogues had specifically hunted. An Omega who his wolf recognized as mate despite every law of pack hierarchy that said such a bond was impossible. "Secure the scene," he ordered. "I want every piece of evidence collected. I want to know where these rogues came from, what corrupted them, and why they targeted her specifically." His arms tightened protectively. "And I want absolute silence about what happened here until I say otherwise." "Sire?" Stanley questioned. Adrian met his head warrior's gaze. "An Omega who can kill 30 rogues single-handedly is either the most dangerous wolf alive or something we don't understand is happening." His eyes dropped to Aaron's unconscious face. "Either way, she's under my protection now, and I'm going to find out exactly what she is." Even if it meant discovering that everything he thought he knew about Omegas, about pack bonds, about the natural order itself, was a lie. Chapter 2. The Alpha's Claim. The ride back to Silvercrest territory was the longest hour of Adrian's life. Aaron remained unconscious in his arms, her body cradled against his chest as his wolf ran at the center of his warrior formation. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to tend her wounds immediately, to mark her and make the bond undeniable before she could slip away. But reason, what little remained, told him she needed proper medical care first. The wounds marking her body should have killed her hours ago, yet somehow she still breathed, still lived despite blood loss that would have felled even a strong beta. "What are you?" he thought, studying her face in the dappled sunlight. "And why does my wolf recognize you as mate when you're an Omega?" It went against everything he'd been taught. The mate bond was supposed to be balanced. Alpha to Luna, Beta to strong female, Omega to male Omega, or gentle Beta. The bond ensured strong pairings that could lead packs effectively. An Alpha King mated to an Omega was unheard of, impossible. Yet his wolf had never been more certain of anything. "Your Majesty," Nate's voice cut through his thoughts. The Beta ran alongside him, concern evident in his tone. "The pack is going to have questions when we arrive with an unknown Omega." "Let them question," Adrian growled. "Sire, you know how the court reacts to changes. If they sense the mate bond, then they'll accept it." Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. "She's under my protection. That's all anyone needs to know for now." Stanley joined them from the front position. "The healer is preparing the medical wing. I've also stationed guards outside her rooms, discreetly, as you ordered." "Good." Adrian's arms tightened fractionally around Aaron's limp form. "What about the evidence from the scene?" "Eric is handling collection. He'll report findings directly to you." Stanley hesitated. Your Majesty, there's something you should know. When we were securing the perimeter, we found tracks. What kind of tracks? Human. Someone was watching the fight from the tree line. They observed the entire battle and left immediately after the rogues were dead. Ice shot through Adrian's veins. Before or after we arrived? Before. They were gone within seconds of the last rogue falling. So someone had witnessed Aaron's impossible display of power and deliberately fled before Adrian's warriors could intercept them. That meant information about what she could do was already spreading beyond his control. "Find them," Adrian commanded. "I want to know who they are and who they're reporting to." "Yes, Your Majesty." They crested the final ridge, and Silvercrest territory spread before them. The pack lands encompassed thousands of acres of protected forest, with the main compound situated at the center. Multiple buildings housed pack members, training facilities, administrative offices, and the Great Hall where pack gatherings occurred. At the heart of it all stood the Alpha's residence, a massive structure that had housed the ruling bloodline for centuries. As they approached, wolves began emerging from buildings and trees, drawn by the commotion of the Alpha King's return. Adrian could feel their curiosity, their questions, their shock at seeing him carrying an unconscious Omega. He ignored them all, heading straight for the medical wing. The healer, a stern woman named Diane Rivers, waited at the entrance, her experienced gaze immediately assessing Aaron's condition. "Bring her inside. Private room, far corridor." Adrian followed without question, grateful for Diane's discretion. She'd been pack healer for 40 years and understood the need for privacy in delicate situations. The private room was spacious and well lit, with medical equipment readily available. Adrian laid Aaron carefully on the bed, his wolf snarling protest at releasing her even for necessary medical care. "Out," Diane ordered, already moving to examine her patient. "You'll only be in the way." "I'm staying." Diane's eyebrow rose. "Your Majesty, I can't properly examine her with you hovering. If she's your—" She paused, clearly scenting the mate bond. Her expression shifted to shock. Oh, this is complicated." "You have no idea," Adrian muttered. "How bad are her injuries?" Diane carefully cut away the shredded remains of Aaron's clothing, revealing the full extent of damage beneath. Deep claw marks scored her ribs, a bite wound marked her shoulder, and bruises covered nearly every inch of visible skin. "These wounds are severe," Diane said slowly, "but they're also partially healed. Your Majesty, some of these injuries are hours old, yet they're closing at a rate I'd expect from an Alpha bloodline, not an Omega. Is that possible? It shouldn't be. An Omega's healing factor is only marginally better than human." Diane pressed her fingers gently against Aaron's ribs, frowning. "Several broken ribs, also partially healed. Blood loss significant but not fatal. Again, because she's healing impossibly fast." She looked up at Adrian. "Whatever she is, she's not a normal Omega." "Then what is she?" "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Diane began cleaning wounds with efficient movements. "I'll need to keep her sedated for now. Her body needs rest to finish healing, and frankly, the shock of everything will be easier to manage if she wakes up stable rather than in crisis." Adrian nodded reluctantly. "How long?" "Few hours. Maybe more if her body needs it." Diane's expression softened slightly. "Your Majesty, I know the mate bond is pulling at you. You can stay if you remain out of my way. Sit in that chair and don't interfere." He should leave. Should attend to the dozens of matters requiring Alpha attention. Should be coordinating the investigation into the rogues and their mysterious observer. Instead, Adrian sank into the indicated chair and prepared to wait. His wolf settled slightly, reassured by proximity to their mate, even if they couldn't touch her yet. Time passed in strange rhythm. Diane worked with quiet efficiency, tending wounds and monitoring vitals. Adrian watched Aaron's face, noting details he'd missed in the chaos. The determined set of her jaw, even in unconsciousness, the strength visible in her features despite their delicate appearance. A knock at the door interrupted his observation. "Enter," he called softly. Nate stepped inside, carefully avoiding looking directly at Aaron out of respect for the mate bond. "Your Majesty, I have initial reports. Eric sent word. The corruption affecting those rogues appears magical in nature. He's never seen anything like it." "Magical?" Adrian's attention sharpened. "You mean cursed?" "Possibly. He's consulting with our researchers." Nate hesitated. "There's more. We identified the observer from the tracks. It was Gerardo Michael." The name hit like a physical blow. Gerardo was a low-ranking wolf from one of the noble families, specifically House Townsend, whose patriarch sat on the Alpha Council and had been vocal about maintaining traditional pack hierarchy. "Gerardo reports directly to his uncle, doesn't he?" Adrian said quietly. "Councilman Carol Townsend, yes." Nate's expression darkened. If Townsend knows about her abilities, then he'll use it to create problems. Adrian's jaw tightened. "The Townsends have been pushing for me to take a mate from one of the established Luna bloodlines. An Omega mate, especially one with unexplained powers, threatens their political agenda." "What do you want to do?" Adrian looked at Aaron's sleeping face. "We can't hide what she is. Too many people already know. But we can control the narrative." He stood, decision made. "Call a council meeting for tomorrow morning. I'll introduce her formally and make my claim public." "Your Majesty, are you certain? The bond is new, and she hasn't even accepted—" "She's my mate," Adrian said flatly. "The bond exists whether she's accepted it or not, and she's under my protection, which means the pack will treat her with the respect she's due." His voice dropped dangerously. "Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." Nate bowed. "I'll arrange the meeting." As his beta left, Adrian returned to his chair. Diane had finished her examination and was making notes on a tablet, her expression thoughtful. "Well," Adrian prompted. "She's stable, healing well, too well, frankly." Diane set down the tablet. "Your Majesty, I've been pack healer for a long time. I've seen a lot of unusual cases, but I've never seen an Omega with this kind of regenerative capability." "What's your theory?" "I don't have one yet, but there are old stories." She trailed off, seeming to reconsider. "What stories?" Diane met his gaze. "Stories about royal Omegas, a bloodline that was supposed to have died out centuries ago. They were said to possess alpha-level strength while maintaining Omega designation. The bloodline was considered sacred. Their presence could strengthen entire packs through bond networks we don't fully understand." Adrian's wolf perked up with intense interest. "Why did the bloodline die out?" "Politics, mostly. Royal Omegas were too powerful. They disrupted traditional hierarchy, made people uncomfortable. There were also rumors of attempted genocide by noble families who saw them as threats." Diane's expression turned grave. "If she's Royal Omega bloodline, Your Majesty, there are people who will want her dead." "Then they'll have to go through me." "I don't doubt that. But you should know what you're protecting." Diane gestured to Aaron. "If the stories are true, Royal Omegas don't just possess physical strength. They have abilities we've forgotten. Pack sense that extends across territories. Healing that can save dying wolves. Influence over bond networks that can unite or fracture entire alliances." "You're saying she could be the most powerful wolf in the territories?" "I'm saying she could be the most powerful wolf alive," Diane corrected, "and everyone will want to control that power or eliminate it." Adrian stood, moving to Aaron's bedside. His hand hovered over hers, not quite touching. "She fought to protect children she didn't know, destroyed 30 rogues to keep them safe. That tells me everything I need to know about her character." "And the mate bond?" Diane asked quietly. "The mate bond is real. My wolf recognized her instantly." Adrian finally let his fingers brush against Aaron's. The spark of connection made his wolf rumble with satisfaction. "I don't care if it's unconventional. I don't care if it disrupts pack politics. She's mine." "Then you'd better prepare for war," Diane said bluntly. "Because claiming an Omega, especially a Royal Omega, as your Luna will challenge every traditional belief about pack hierarchy. Noble families will rebel. The council will demand explanation. And if enemies discover what she is before she's strong enough to defend herself. I know. Adrian's grip on Aaron's hand tightened protectively, which is why I need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more time enemies have to organize opposition. A soft sound interrupted them. Aaron was stirring, her eyes moving beneath closed lids as consciousness began returning. Your Majesty, Diane said quickly. When she wakes, she's going to be confused and frightened. You need to be gentle. The mate bond will be overwhelming for her, and she won't understand what's happening. Adrian nodded, though his wolf was already pushing forward eagerly, desperate to properly greet their mate now that she was safe and healing. Aaron's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she stared at the unfamiliar ceiling in confusion. Then awareness returned. The rogues, the battle, the Alpha King appearing through the smoke. Her gaze snapped to Adrian, and he watched emotions flash across her face. Shock, fear, recognition of the mate bond pulling between them. Where? Her voice came out hoarse. Where am I? Silvercrest territory, Adrian said quietly, keeping his voice gentle despite his wolf's eagerness. You're in the medical wing. You're safe. The children? The ones by the stream? Safe. Your fight kept the rogues away from them. Relief flooded her expression, followed immediately by new fear as she seemed to fully register his presence. Your Majesty, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I shouldn't have been able to breathe, Adrian commanded softly. You're not in trouble. But I'm just an Omega. I shouldn't have survived. I shouldn't have been able to fight like that. Her hands trembled as she gripped the blanket. Something's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you, Adrian said firmly. But we do need to understand what you are. What I am? Aaron's laugh held an edge of hysteria. I'm nobody. I'm an Omega from a small pack who works in the herb gardens and stays out of everyone's way. I'm not special. I'm not... She cut off abruptly, her eyes widening as she clearly felt the mate bond pulling stronger now that she was conscious and alert. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. You're the Alpha King. You can't be mated to someone like me. I'm mine. Adrian's wolf forced the word out before he could stop it. My mate. Aaron stared at him in absolute horror. I need to leave, she said frantically, trying to sit up despite Diane's protests. I need to go back to my pack. This is a mistake. The bond is wrong somehow. You need to find a proper Luna. Aaron. Adrian caught her shoulders gently, stopping her panicked movement. The mate bond doesn't make mistakes. What you're feeling is real. But I'm an Omega. The words came out anguished. Omegas don't mate with Alpha Kings. It goes against everything. I don't care about everything, Adrian interrupted. I care about what my wolf knows to be true. You're my mate. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You don't understand. I can't be a Luna. I don't know how. I've spent my entire life being told I'm weak, that I'm only good for bearing children and gentle work. I can't lead a pack. I can't be what you need. The desperation in her voice made Adrian's chest ache. Who told you that you're weak? Everyone. My pack, my family, every wolf I've ever met. She looked down at her hands, hands that had killed 30 rogues hours ago. Until today, I believed them. And now? Now I don't know what I believe. She met his eyes, and he saw the confusion and fear swirling in her gaze. What's happening to me? That's what we're going to find out, Adrian promised. But first, you need to rest and heal. Then we'll start looking for answers. And the mate bond? Adrian knew he should give her time, should let her process everything without pressure. But his wolf wouldn't be denied. The bond is real. I'm not asking you to accept it immediately, but I am telling you that you're under my protection now. No one will harm you. No one will make you return to a pack that told you lies about your worth. Your Majesty, Adrian, he corrected. When we're private, you can call me Adrian. The intimacy of using his name clearly terrified her. I can't. It wouldn't be proper. Nothing about this situation is proper, Adrian said with faint humor. We might as well skip the formalities. Before Aaron could respond, a commotion outside the door made them both tense. Raised voices, someone demanding entrance despite the guards' protests. The door burst open. A woman swept inside, tall, beautiful, with blonde hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to getting her way. Her eyes fixed on Aaron with undisguised hostility. "So it's true," she said coldly. "You've brought an Omega here, to our territory." Adrian stood, positioning himself between the newcomer and Aaron's bed. "Sherry, you weren't invited." Sherry Bolton, daughter of one of the most powerful noble families, had been pursuing Adrian for years. She'd made it clear she expected to be chosen as Luna, and she'd cultivated support among the traditional council members who agreed an alpha king needed a strong mate from established bloodlines. "I don't need an invitation to investigate threats to our pack," Sherry said sharply. "The rumors are already spreading, Adrian. You were seen carrying an unknown Omega through our territory. People are talking." "Then they can talk to me directly," Adrian said dangerously. "This is absurd." Sherry's gaze raked over Aaron with contempt. "She's an Omega. She doesn't belong here, and she certainly doesn't belong with you." Adrian felt his wolf surge forward with protective rage. "You forget yourself." "I forget nothing. I remember that you need a Luna who can actually lead, who can bear strong heirs, who has the bloodline and training to stand at your side." Sherry's voice rose. "Not some weak Omega who probably can't even—" "She killed 30 rogues," Adrian interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. "Single-handedly, while your strong bloodline was nowhere to be found." Sherry's expression flickered with shock before hardening again. "That's impossible. And yet it happened. I witnessed the aftermath myself." Adrian took a step forward, using his alpha presence to dominate the room. "Now you will leave. Immediately." "Adrian, you can't seriously consider—" "Alpha King," he corrected icily, "and what I consider is none of your concern. What is your concern is showing proper respect to someone under my protection, or facing consequences for your disrespect." Sherry's face flushed with anger and humiliation. "The council will hear about this." "Good. I'm calling a council meeting tomorrow morning anyway. You can share your objections then." Adrian's eyes glowed with wolf. "Now, leave." For a moment, it seemed Sherry might argue further. Then she spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Silence fell. "Your Majesty," Aaron's voice was small. "She's right. I don't belong here." Adrian turned back to her, his expression softening. "She's wrong. You belong exactly where you are. But the council will accept my decision. Eventually." He returned to his chair beside her bed. "Aaron, I won't lie to you. This situation is complicated. There will be opposition. People will question the mate bond, question your abilities, question everything. Then maybe— But," he continued firmly, "I don't care. My wolf knows you're my mate. I know you're stronger than anyone realizes. And I'm going to prove it to everyone who doubts." His hand covered hers again. "If you'll let me." Aaron stared at their joined hands, clearly feeling the bond's pull as strongly as he did. "I don't know how to be what you need." "Then we'll figure it out together." She looked up at him, tears still glistening in her eyes. "Why? Why would you risk so much for someone like me?" "Because you're not someone like you," Adrian said simply. "You're my mate. You're extraordinary. And I think, deep down, you're starting to realize that you're capable of far more than anyone ever told you." Aaron's breath hitched. The mate bond hummed between them, undeniable and growing stronger with every moment. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." Adrian squeezed her hand gently. "But you don't have to be scared alone anymore." For the first time since waking, Aaron's expression softened slightly. The fear didn't disappear, but something else joined it. Tentative hope, fragile trust, and the beginning of acceptance. Outside, Adrian could hear the pack stirring, could sense the questions and concerns spreading through bond networks. Tomorrow's council meeting would be explosive. Sherry would rally her supporters, the traditional families would demand explanations, and enemies would begin plotting how to use this situation to their advantage. But tonight, in this quiet room, with his mate finally safe and beginning to heal, Adrian allowed himself a moment of peace. Whatever came next, they would face it together, even if it meant going to war to protect her. Chapter 3. Defying the Alpha. Aaron woke to pale dawn light filtering through unfamiliar windows, and the immediate awareness that she wasn't alone. Adrian sat in the chair beside her bed, his large frame somehow fitting into furniture that seemed too small for an alpha king. His eyes were closed, head tilted back against the wall, but she could tell from the tension in his shoulders that he wasn't truly sleeping, just resting while maintaining vigilance. He'd stayed all night. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now after hours of proximity. Aaron could feel his wolf through the connection. Powerful, protective, absolutely certain about their bond, despite every logical reason it shouldn't exist. Her own wolf, usually so quiet and timid, stirred with unusual boldness. "Mate?" it whispered with satisfaction. "Safe. Ours." Aaron pushed the thoughts away, focusing instead on her body's condition. The wounds from yesterday should have left her barely able to move, yet she felt only residual soreness. When she carefully lifted the blanket to examine her ribs, she found pink scars where deep claw marks had been. Impossible healing, just like her impossible strength during the fight. What am I? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Adrian's eyes opened immediately, completely alert, despite having just been resting. The transition spoke of years of military training. "Enter," he said quietly. Diane stepped inside carrying a tray of food. Her experienced gaze swept over Aaron, clearly assessing her condition. "Good morning. How do you feel?" "Better than I should," Aaron admitted. "Let me see." Diane set down the tray and approached, her hands gentle as she examined the healing wounds. After a moment, she stepped back with an expression of professional fascination. "Remarkable. These injuries should have taken weeks to heal, even for a strong beta. You've managed it in less than 24 hours. Is that normal for whatever I am?" If my theories are correct about Royal Omega bloodline, then yes, they were said to heal almost as quickly as alphas. Diane handed her a glass of water. "Drink. Your body needs fluids to finish the healing process." Aaron obeyed, grateful for something to do with her hands. Over the rim of the glass, she watched Adrian stand and stretch, his movements fluid despite hours in an uncomfortable chair. "I need to prepare for the council meeting," he said, though his eyes remained on Aaron. "It starts in 2 hours." "Do I need to be there?" Aaron asked, dreading the answer. "Eventually, yes, but not today. Today I'll make the formal announcement and handle initial objections. You should rest and—" Howls suddenly erupted across the territory, alarm calls that made both Adrian and Diane tense immediately. "That's the northern border," Adrian said, already moving toward the door. "Attack warning." "Your Majesty, you can't leave her unguarded," Diane protested. Adrian paused, clearly torn between duty to his pack and instinct to protect his mate. His jaw tightened with decision. "Nate!" he called through the door. His beta appeared instantly. "Sire? Stay with her. Don't let anyone in except Diane. If anything happens, I'll protect her with my life," Nate promised. Adrian's gaze returned to Aaron. The mate bond pulled between them, his wolf clearly unhappy about leaving her. "I'll return as soon as possible." Then he was gone, shifting into his massive wolf form before he even cleared the doorway. Through the window, Aaron watched him race toward the northern border, with several warriors flanking him. Nate positioned himself by the door, his posture alert. Diane busied herself checking medical supplies, though Aaron noticed the healer kept glancing toward the window with concern. "What's happening?" Aaron asked quietly. "Could be rogues testing our defenses," Nate replied. "Or it could be something else. We've had increased activity near the borders lately." "Because of me?" Nate's expression softened slightly. "You're not responsible for what rogues choose to do." But Erin remembered what Eric had reported, that the rogues yesterday had been hunting specifically for her. If more attacks were connected to her presence, she pushed aside the blanket and stood, ignoring Diane's protest. "What are you doing?" the healer demanded. "Getting dressed. If there's an attack, I'm not staying in bed." "You're still healing?" "I healed enough to fight yesterday." Erin's voice came out stronger than intended. "I'm not helpless." Nate and Diane exchanged glances. Finally, Diane sighed and retrieved clean clothes from a cabinet. "At least wear something appropriate." The clothes were simple but well made, soft pants and a tunic in shades of gray. As Erin dressed, she became aware of distant sounds of combat. Snarls, howls. The clash of wolves fighting in deadly earnest. Her wolf paced restlessly. Mate, fighting, should help, should protect. "I need to go to him," Erin said before she could stop herself. "Absolutely not," Nate replied firmly. "The Alpha King ordered me to keep you safe." "But if he's in danger..." "He's the most powerful Alpha alive, surrounded by elite warriors. He doesn't need protection." Nate's tone gentled. "I understand the mate bond is pulling at you, but you need to trust that he can handle himself." Erin wanted to argue, but before she could, new sounds reached them, closer than before. Fighting had moved into the inner territory, which meant the border defenses had been breached. Nate's entire posture shifted to combat ready. "Diane, get her to the safe room." "There's no time," Diane said, her voice tight. "Whatever's coming is already too close." Through the window, Erin saw wolves racing through the compound. Not the organized patrols of pack warriors, but the chaotic movement of rogues who'd somehow penetrated deep into Silvercrest territory. And they were heading directly toward the medical wing. "They're coming for her," Nate realized with horror. How did they know where she'd be? "Someone told them," Diane said grimly. "Someone inside the pack." A massive crash shook the building as something slammed against the outer door. Wood splintered, metal shrieked, and suddenly the medical wing's entrance gave way. 4 rogues poured inside, corrupted wolves whose eyes burned with the same madness Erin had seen yesterday. But these moved with more purpose, more intelligence, clearly following orders rather than attacking randomly. Nate shifted instantly, placing himself between the rogues and Erin. His wolf was large and powerful, marked with the scars of a veteran fighter. He lunged at the first rogue with lethal intent, but there were 4 of them, and only 1 of him. Erin watched in horror as Nate was driven back, his fighting skill obvious but insufficient against multiple corrupted enemies. 1 rogue got past his defense, its jaws snapping toward Diane. Erin moved without thinking. Her shift happened faster than should be possible, her wolf form emerging in a heartbeat rather than the painful minutes most wolves required. She hit the attacking rogue mid-leap, her claws finding its throat with precision that came from somewhere beyond conscious thought. The rogue died instantly. Its packmates turned toward her, recognition flashing in their corrupted eyes. They'd been sent for her specifically, and now they abandoned their attack on Nate to focus entirely on their primary target. Erin's wolf met their charge with savage confidence. The timid Omega, who'd spent years avoiding conflict, was gone, replaced by something that moved with deadly grace and absolute certainty. She ducked under the first rogue's attack, her claws opening its belly. Spun away from the second's snapping jaws, her teeth finding the vulnerable junction of neck and shoulder. The third rogue managed to score her flank with its claws, but the pain only sharpened her focus. Within seconds, all 3 rogues lay dead or dying. Nate stared at her in absolute shock, his wolf form bleeding from multiple wounds, but alive. Diane stood pressed against the wall, her eyes wide with professional fascination, despite the danger. Before anyone could speak, more sounds of combat erupted nearby. The rogues' attack hadn't been limited to the medical wing. They'd hit multiple locations simultaneously, stretching pack defenses across the entire compound. Through the shattered door, Erin saw pack members fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers, saw young wolves barely out of training trying to defend against enemies that should have been stopped at the border. saw an elder fall beneath corrupted fangs. Her wolf surged forward before rational thought could intervene. "Wait!" Nate called. But she was already gone, racing through the compound toward wolves who needed help. The next few minutes passed in a blur of movement and violence. Erin's body moved with instincts she didn't understand, techniques she'd never learned, awareness that seemed to extend beyond normal senses. She could feel the pack bonds connecting every wolf in the territory, sense their fear, their determination, their desperate need for help, and somehow, impossibly, she could strengthen those bonds. When she passed near wounded pack members, their injuries seemed to heal faster. When she fought alongside young warriors, they moved with enhanced coordination, as if her presence elevated their abilities. When she howled, not the weak sound of an omega, but a commanding call that carried alpha authority, wolves across the territory responded with renewed strength. She saved the elder who'd fallen, killing his attacker and defending his position until help arrived, protected a group of juveniles caught outside the safe room, her body serving as living shield against corrupted claws. Coordinated with warriors she'd never met, their wolves somehow understanding her tactical intentions through bond connections that shouldn't exist. By the time Adrian's massive wolf form appeared, racing back from the northern border where the initial attack had been a diversion, the tide of battle had already turned. He slid to a stop, his amber eyes fixing on her with an expression of absolute shock. Around them, pack members stared at the Omega who'd just defended their territory with alpha-level prowess. The Omega who'd strengthened their bonds and coordinated their defense through supernatural awareness. The Omega who stood among dead rogues, blood-stained but undefeated, while wounded pack members looked at her with something approaching awe. Adrian shifted to human form, and Erin forced her own shift, despite her wolf's reluctance to appear vulnerable. She faced him with chin raised, aware that she'd just defied his direct order to stay protected. "I told you to stay in the medical wing," Adrian said quietly. His voice carried no anger, only complex emotions she couldn't quite identify. "Your pack needed help," Erin replied simply. "I couldn't hide while they fought." "You could have been killed." "So could they." Adrian's jaw tightened. Around them, more pack members were gathering, warriors returning from various defensive positions, civilians emerging from safe rooms, all of them witnessing this confrontation between Alpha King and his Omega mate, who'd just displayed impossible powers. Stanley approached cautiously, his expression troubled. "Your Majesty, the attack was coordinated." They hit 3 locations simultaneously: northern border, eastern perimeter, and directly here. It was designed to separate you from, he glanced at Erin, from her. "How did they know where she'd be?" Adrian demanded. "Unknown, but someone with inside knowledge had to have provided intelligence." Stanley's voice dropped. "Sire, there's more. During the fighting, I overheard one of the rogues speak. They're not just mindless anymore. They're being controlled." "Controlled by whom?" "They mentioned the Master before I killed it. Nothing more specific." Adrian's expression darkened. He turned back to Erin, and she braced herself for anger about her disobedience. Instead, he reached out and gently touched one of the fresh wounds marking her shoulder. "You're hurt," he said softly. "It's nothing. It'll heal." "That's not the point." His hand lingered against her skin, the mate bond humming between them with increased intensity. "You scared me." The admission surprised her. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf alive, had been scared for her safety. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but I couldn't just hide, not when people needed help." "I know." Adrian's thumb traced the edge of her wound, his touch sending warmth through her entire body. "That's what makes you dangerous." "Dangerous?" "To my control, to my ability to make rational decisions, to my certainty about anything." His amber eyes met hers. "Because watching you fight, seeing you protect pack members you don't even know, feeling the way you strengthened our bond network." He paused. "You're not just my mate, Erin. You're exactly what this pack needs." "And that terrifies me," Why? Because it means I was right. You are royal Omega bloodline, and when the other territories find out, his expression grew grim. Every enemy I've ever made will target you. Every traditional family will try to eliminate you, and I'll burn this entire world down before I let anyone hurt you. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Aaron's breath catch. Around them, pack members listened with varying expressions, some showing approval, others concern, still others the calculation of wolves already considering political implications. Sherry pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with fury. This is madness. She disobeyed a direct order from her Alpha King. She endangered herself and others through her reckless actions. And you're what? Praising her for it? She saved lives, Adrian said coldly. While you were safe in your quarters, I was following proper protocol during an attack. She was protecting pack members who needed help. Adrian's voice carried undeniable authority, which is exactly what a Luna should do. The word hung in the air like a declaration of war. Gasps rippled through the gathered wolves. Sherry's face went white with shock and rage. You can't be serious, she breathed. You're going to name an Omega as Luna? I'm going to name my mate as Luna, Adrian corrected. Her designation is irrelevant compared to her capabilities. The Council will never accept this. Then the Council can challenge my decision directly. Adrian's eyes glowed with Wolf. At the meeting that starts in 1 hour, I suggest you attend if you want your objections heard properly. Sherry looked like she wanted to argue further. But the alpha command in Adrian's voice was absolute. After a long moment, she spun and stalked away, several nobles following in her wake. The crowd began dispersing, wolves returning to their duties with backward glances at Aaron. She could feel their curiosity through the pack bonds, some fascinated, some concerned, all of them confused by the Omega who just defended their territory with alpha-level strength. Finally, only Adrian, Nate, Stanley, and Diane remained. Your Majesty, Stanley said carefully, I know you're committed to protecting her, but Sherry is right about one thing. The Council is going to be hostile, especially now that they've witnessed her abilities firsthand. Let them be hostile. Sire, with respect, you're underestimating the political ramifications. The noble families have been pushing for traditional mate selection. An Omega Luna, particularly one with unexplained powers, threatens everything they believe about pack hierarchy. Good, Adrian said flatly. It's time those beliefs were challenged. Some of them will try to remove her, Stanley warned, by whatever means necessary. Then they'll discover exactly how serious I am about protecting my mate. Adrian's hand found Aaron's, his fingers interlacing with hers. I'm done pretending politics matters more than the mate bond. I'm done letting tradition dictate who I can claim, and I'm done hiding what she is to protect people's delicate sensibilities. Aaron squeezed his hand, overwhelmed by his fierce defense. Adrian, maybe they're right. Maybe I should— No. He turned to face her fully. You should stand at my side. You should be recognized for what you truly are, and you should help me drag this pack into the future, whether they want to come or not. I don't know how to be a Luna. Then we'll figure it out together. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. Starting with that council meeting. You're coming with me. Is that wise? Diane asked. They'll tear her apart. They'll try, Adrian agreed. But she just defended this territory against overwhelming odds. She strengthened pack bonds that have been weakening for years. She demonstrated capabilities that belong in legends. His eyes never left Aaron's face. Let them try to deny what she is. I dare them. Despite her fear, despite the uncertainty churning in her stomach, Aaron found herself nodding. Okay, I'll go. Good. Adrian's expression softened. But first, let Diane treat those wounds. And eat something. You're going to need your strength. As Diane led her back toward the medical wing and pack members began cleaning up battle debris, Aaron glanced back at Adrian. He stood among the destruction, coordinating with his warriors, every inch the powerful Alpha King. But when he looked at her, she saw something beyond authority or duty. She saw a wolf who'd found his mate and would fight heaven and hell to keep her. The mate bond hummed between them, growing stronger with every moment. And somewhere in the shadows beyond Silvercrest territory, enemies were already gathering to challenge the impossible bond between an Alpha King and the Omega who should never have existed. Chapter 4. Forbidden Bloodline. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Aaron stood beside Adrian at the center of a circular room ringed by elevated seats where council members looked down upon those who addressed them. Ancient stone walls bore the carved names of every Alpha King who'd ruled the Northern Territories, their legacy weighing heavy on anyone who dared challenge tradition. She'd changed into formal clothing that Diane had provided, a deep blue dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical. Her wounds were hidden beneath the fabric, though the lingering soreness reminded her of the morning's battle with every breath. Around her, she could feel the pack bonds connecting every wolf in the room. The sensation was still new and overwhelming, like hearing dozens of conversations simultaneously, feeling emotions that weren't her own, sensing presences even when she couldn't see them directly. Is this what Royal Omegas experienced, she wondered, this constant awareness of everyone around them? The council members filed in one by one, taking their elevated seats with ceremonial precision. Aaron recognized some from Adrian's descriptions: Carol Townsend, whose nephew had witnessed her initial fight with the rogues; Vonda Stokes, an elder whose family had held council positions for generations; Jimmy Brady, a younger council member known for progressive views; and Sherry, who sat among the nobles with barely concealed fury in her eyes. When everyone was seated, Adrian stepped forward. "This council is called to address matters of pack security and leadership," he began, his voice carrying the undeniable authority of an Alpha King. "Recent events have brought both crisis and opportunity to our territory. I will address each in turn." "Your Majesty," Carol interrupted immediately. "Before you begin, this council demands explanation for the presence of an unknown Omega at these proceedings. Council meetings are restricted to pack members of appropriate rank." "Erin is here because she is directly relevant to matters under discussion," Adrian replied coolly, "and because I have claimed her as my mate." The formal declaration sent shockwaves through the room. Several council members gasped. Others leaned forward with calculating expressions. Sherry's face went deathly pale. "Impossible," Carol declared. "You cannot mate an Omega. Pack law requires the Alpha King to select a Luna from established bloodlines capable of—" "Pack law," Adrian interrupted, "requires the Alpha King to follow the mate bond provided by the Moon Goddess herself. Or are you suggesting I defy divine will to satisfy political convenience?" The challenge hung in the air. Carol's jaw tightened, but he couldn't directly argue against divine will without risking accusations of blasphemy. Vonda spoke up, her aged voice carrying shrewd intelligence. "Your Majesty, no one disputes the mate bond's sacred nature, but surely you understand our concern. An Omega Luna is unprecedented in our history. Omegas lack the strength, the presence, the capabilities required to lead." "Do they?" Adrian gestured to Aaron. "This Omega single-handedly killed 30 rogues 2 days ago. This morning, she defended our territory when corrupted enemies breached our borders. She strengthened pack bonds that have been weakening for years through capabilities none of us fully understand. Tell me, Counselor, which of these accomplishments suggests weakness?" Murmurs rippled through the council. Aaron felt their attention focus on her with uncomfortable intensity, their emotions ranging from curiosity to hostility to confusion. "We've heard the reports," Carol said dismissively. "Exaggerations spread by warriors caught up in battle fever. Surely the reality is more mundane." "Are you calling me a liar?" Stanley spoke from his position against the wall, where the elite warriors stood as witnesses. "I collected evidence from the initial battle site. 30 dead rogues, all with kill strikes that required alpha-level strength. I personally witnessed her fight this morning, watched her coordinate defensive efforts through pack bonds in ways I've never seen. And what is your explanation for these impossible abilities? Vonda asked, her eyes fixed on Aaron. No Omega in recorded history has displayed such power. This was the moment. Aaron felt Adrian's hand brush against hers, offering silent support. She took a breath and stepped forward. I don't have a complete explanation, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Until 2 days ago, I believed I was a normal Omega. Weak. Unremarkable. Someone who existed on the margins of pack life without contributing anything significant. A realistic assessment, Sherry interjected coldly. Aaron ignored her. But when the rogues attacked, when children were in danger, something inside me woke up. My wolf became stronger, faster, more capable than should be possible, and I knew, somehow I just knew, exactly how to fight them. Convenient timing, Carol observed. These abilities manifesting precisely when needed. Not convenient, terrifying. Aaron met his gaze directly. I don't understand what's happening to me, but I know it's real. And I know that pretending I'm still a normal Omega won't make the truth disappear. And what truth is that? Vonda asked. Before Aaron could answer, Diane entered the chamber with unusual formality. She bowed to Adrian. Your Majesty, you requested I present my findings to the council. Proceed. Diane moved to the center of the room, carrying several documents. I've spent the past day researching historical records and conducting medical examinations. My findings are extraordinary. She spread the documents on the central table, revealing old texts and medical charts. 300 years ago, there existed a bloodline known as Royal Omegas. They were rare, perhaps one in every generation, but their abilities were legendary. They possessed alpha-level strength while maintaining Omega designation. They could strengthen pack bonds across vast distances, heal wounded wolves through touch, and coordinate defensive efforts through supernatural awareness. Myths, Carol scoffed. Stories told to children. I thought so too, Diane admitted. Until I examined Aaron's blood. She held up a medical report. Her cellular structure is unique. Enhanced healing factors, unusual hormonal markers, genetic expressions that don't match normal Omega physiology. She is, without doubt, Royal Omega bloodline. Silence fell across the chamber. Impossible, Vonda breathed. The Royal Omega bloodline was eliminated during the purge. Every known member was killed, their family records destroyed. The bloodline was declared extinct. Apparently not as extinct as believed, Diane said dryly. Someone survived, and their descendants include Aaron. Aaron's mind reeled. Everything she'd been told about her family, her heritage, her identity, all lies designed to hide the truth about what she was. Who were my parents? She demanded. Who am I really? That, Diane said gently, is what we need to investigate. But based on historical records, Royal Omegas were specifically targeted for elimination because their abilities threatened traditional power structures. Noble families who derived authority from being the strongest. Most capable wolves couldn't compete with Omegas who matched their strength while also possessing unique bonding abilities. You're describing a political genocide, Jimmy spoke up, horror evident in his voice. That's exactly what it was, Diane confirmed. And if Aaron's true heritage becomes widely known, the families who participated in the purge, or who benefited from it, will have significant motivation to ensure history doesn't repeat itself. The implication was clear. Some of the wolves in this very room might descend from families who'd helped eliminate Royal Omegas centuries ago, and they would see Aaron as a direct threat to their continued power. Carol's expression had gone carefully neutral. This is a fascinating historical theory, but it doesn't change practical realities. Even if this Omega possesses unusual abilities, she lacks the training, the political knowledge, the social connections required of a Luna. Then she'll learn, Adrian said flatly, just as every Luna before her had to learn. In time, perhaps. But Your Majesty, you cannot seriously intend to present an untrained Omega as Luna to the other territories. The ridicule alone— Let them ridicule, Adrian interrupted. Let them underestimate her. It will make their surprise more satisfying when they discover exactly how powerful she is. You're being ruled by the mate bond, Sherry accused, finally breaking her silence. It's clouding your judgment. The rational choice is clear. Reject this impossible bond and select a proper Luna from established bloodlines. Adrian's eyes flashed with Wolf. The mate bond cannot be rejected without destroying both parties involved. Would you have me kill myself and my mate to satisfy your political preferences? I would have you choose the pack's welfare over personal desire. And I am choosing the pack's welfare. Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. For years, our pack bonds have been weakening. Wolves feel disconnected from leadership, isolated from each other. That weakness made us vulnerable to this morning's attack. But during the battle, something changed. Pack members reported feeling stronger, more coordinated, more connected to each other. They described sensing strategic intentions without verbal communication. They experienced enhanced healing and combat effectiveness. He gestured to Erin. All of that happened because she was present, because her Royal Omega abilities strengthened bonds that have been deteriorating for decades. That is exactly what this pack needs, someone who can unite us in ways traditional leadership never could. Or, Carol said coldly, her presence caused the attack in the first place. Perhaps the rogues targeted our territory specifically because she's here. The accusation hit Erin like a physical blow. She'd been thinking the same thing, that the attacks were somehow connected to her presence. The rogues were hunting her before she came to our territory, Stanley countered. The initial attack occurred in neutral lands. They found her here because someone betrayed her location. Someone from inside our pack, Nate added. The attack this morning was too coordinated, too well informed about our defensive positions and where Erin would be. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The implications of a traitor in their midst shifted the conversation's dynamics significantly. Your Majesty, Vonda said carefully, if there is indeed a traitor, then this Omega's presence represents a security risk regardless of her abilities. Perhaps she should be relocated somewhere safer until the threat is neutralized. No, Adrian said firmly. She stays where I can protect her. Even if it endangers the entire pack? The pack is already endangered. Someone is controlling corrupted rogues, targeting us specifically, and has intelligence contacts inside our territory. Sending Erin away accomplishes nothing except removing the one wolf who significantly strengthened our defensive capabilities this morning. Jimmy leaned forward. Your Majesty, I think we're missing the larger point. If Royal Omega bloodline truly has survived, if the abilities described in historical records are real, then Erin represents an opportunity we cannot ignore. The territories have been fractured for generations, with each pack operating independently and conflicts erupting regularly. But Royal Omegas were said to create bond networks that unified multiple packs, enabling cooperation on scales we've never achieved. You're suggesting we use her abilities for political expansion? Carol demanded. I'm suggesting we use her abilities for survival, Jimmy corrected. Whoever is controlling these corrupted rogues has resources and organization that threatens all territories. We need every advantage available to counter them. And conveniently, this gives the Alpha King excuse to keep his Omega mate regardless of tradition, Sherry said bitterly. Adrian's expression went cold. This council does not dictate my personal choices. I've extended the courtesy of explaining my decisions and providing evidence for Erin's capabilities. But make no mistake, I will claim her as Luna with or without your approval. The only question is whether you accept reality gracefully or force me to demonstrate exactly how serious I am about protecting my mate. The threat was unmistakable. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, clearly weighing the political costs of opposing their Alpha King directly. Vonda studied Adrian for a long moment, then shifted her attention to Erin. Child, you've been quiet during much of this discussion. What do you want? The question caught Aaron off guard. Everyone had been arguing about her, debating her fate and abilities, without actually asking what she desired. I want to understand what I am, Aaron said slowly. I want to find out who my parents really were and why my heritage was hidden. I want to learn how to control these abilities instead of being terrified every time they manifest. She paused, gathering courage. And I want to help. This morning when I felt the pack bonds, when I sensed people who needed protection, that felt right in a way nothing else in my life ever has. If I can use these abilities to protect people, to strengthen connections that keep everyone safer, then I want to try. Even if it means accepting the burden of being Luna? Vonda asked. I don't know if I can be what a Luna should be, Aaron admitted, but I know I have to try, because Adrian is right. These abilities exist for a reason. Hiding from them doesn't serve anyone. Vonda's expression softened slightly. At least you're honest about your limitations. That's more than many Lunas manage. She looked around the council chamber. I propose a compromise. The Alpha King may claim this Omega as his mate, as is his right under pack law. However, formal recognition as Luna will be delayed until she completes traditional training and demonstrates capability to fulfill Luna responsibilities beyond combat applications. That's reasonable, Jimmy agreed quickly. Carol looked like he wanted to argue further, but several other council members were nodding. The compromise allowed them to acknowledge the mate bond without fully endorsing an Omega Luna, at least not yet. Acceptable, Adrian said after a moment. But the training period will be supervised by myself and advisors I select. I won't have Erin subjected to impossible standards designed to ensure her failure. Agreed, Vonda said. Now regarding the security concerns... The discussion shifted to investigation of the traitor and enhanced defensive measures. Erin found herself relegated to observer status as council members debated patrol schedules, intelligence gathering, and political implications of the attacks. But she could feel their emotions through the pack bonds, confusion, concern, calculation, and in a few cases, active hostility toward her presence. Some wolves were genuinely trying to adapt to unexpected circumstances. Others were already planning ways to undermine her position. After what felt like hours, Adrian finally dismissed the council. Pack members filed out, most avoiding direct eye contact with Erin. Only a few, Jimmy, Stanley, and surprisingly Vonda, offered small nods of acknowledgement as they passed. Sherry was the last to leave, her eyes burning with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, she said quietly as she passed. Then they were alone, except for Nate and Stanley. That went better than expected, Nate observed. Better? Aaron asked incredulously. They didn't call for your immediate execution or demand Adrian reject the bond, Stanley pointed out. In council politics, that counts as success. Adrian moved to Aaron's side, his hand finding hers. You did well. Speaking honestly was the right choice. I feel like I just painted a target on my back. You already had a target on your back, Adrian said bluntly. Now at least it's official. Despite everything, Erin found herself laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that nonetheless released some of the tension coiling in her chest. What happens now? She asked. Now we investigate your heritage, train you in Luna responsibilities, and prepare for whatever enemy is controlling those rogues to make their next move. Adrian's expression grew serious. And we find the traitor before they can provide more intelligence to our enemies. Do you have suspects? Several, but proving betrayal requires evidence, and whoever the traitor is, they've been careful. He squeezed her hand. For now, you stay close to me or trusted guards. No wandering the territory alone. No taking unnecessary risks. Even if people need help? Adrian's jaw tightened. Especially then. Your instinct to protect others is admirable, but it makes you predictable. Enemies will create situations designed to draw you out. So I'm supposed to hide while others fight? You're supposed to stay alive long enough to learn how to use your abilities properly. Adrian corrected. Then you can protect people more effectively than throwing yourself into danger based on instinct alone. Erin wanted to argue, but she could feel the fear beneath his authoritative tone. The mate bond carried his emotions as clearly as her own, concern for her safety, frustration with circumstances beyond his control, determination to protect her regardless of cost. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll try to be more careful." "Thank you." Adrian pressed a kiss to her forehead, the gesture surprisingly tender from someone so powerful. "Now come, I want to show you something." He led her out of the council chamber, through corridors lined with pack history until they reached a section of the compound Erin hadn't seen before. A heavy door marked with ancient symbols opened onto a vast library. "These are our historical archives," Adrian explained. "Every record we have about pack lineages, bloodlines, and significant events. If answers about your heritage exist anywhere, they'll be here." Erin stared at the thousands of volumes lining the walls. "Where do we even start?" "With what we know." Adrian pulled several old texts from a shelf, their pages yellowed with age. Royal Omega bloodline, the purge 300 years ago, survivors who apparently went into hiding. He spread the books on a large table. We find the connections they tried to erase. As Erin looked at the historical records that might finally explain what she was, where she came from, and why her existence had been hidden for so long, she felt something shift inside her. Fear was giving way to determination. Confusion was crystallizing into purpose. She was Royal Omega bloodline, impossible, dangerous, hunted, but she was also Adrian's mate, part of this pack, connected to wolves who needed her abilities even if they didn't fully understand them yet. Whatever her heritage revealed, whatever enemies emerged from the shadows, she would face them, because hiding from the truth had never protected anyone, and she was done pretending to be something she wasn't. Chapter 5. The Alpha's Protection. 3 days passed in a blur of research, training, and growing paranoia. Erin spent hours in the archives with Adrian, searching through centuries-old records for any mention of Royal Omega survivors. The texts described abilities that both fascinated and terrified her, pack bonds that could span entire territories, healing that could save dying wolves, awareness that could predict enemy movements before they materialized. If the records were accurate, she was barely scratching the surface of what she might become. But finding concrete information about her specific lineage proved frustratingly difficult. The purge had been thorough, family records destroyed, bloodline documentation erased, entire histories rewritten to eliminate any trace of Royal Omegas from official records. "It's like they wanted to pretend we never existed," Erin said, closing another useless text with more force than necessary. Adrian looked up from the document he'd been studying. Dark circles under his eyes revealed he'd been sleeping even less than she had, dividing his time between research, managing pack security, and maintaining the constant vigilance that came with knowing a traitor operated somewhere within their territory. "That was exactly the goal," he said. "Make the bloodline disappear so completely that even if survivors existed, they'd never know what they truly were." "It almost worked." Erin traced her finger along the table's edge. "I spent my whole life believing I was weak, useless, someone who existed on the margins because that's all I was capable of. And now? Now I don't know what I am. But I know it's not that." Adrian stood and moved around the table, his hands settling on her shoulders. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now after days of proximity. Erin had stopped fighting the pull, had begun to accept that whatever impossible circumstances had brought them together, the bond itself was undeniably real. "You're stronger than most alphas I know," Adrian said quietly, "braver than warriors with decades of combat experience, and more dangerous to my sanity than any enemy I've ever faced." Erin tilted her head back to look at him. "Dangerous how?" "Because every instinct I have screams at me to lock you somewhere safe where nothing can hurt you, to keep you away from danger, training, anything that might cause you pain." His hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. "But I know you'd hate me for it. No, you need to learn, to grow, to become whatever you're meant to be." "You're right. I would hate you for it. I know. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Doesn't make the instinct any less intense. Before Aaron could respond, rapid footsteps approached. Nate appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Adrian tensed immediately. What kind of situation? Eric returned from investigating the rogue corruption. He found something. And he's requested you both come immediately, says Aaron needs to see this personally. They found Eric in one of the private meeting rooms, surrounded by evidence collected from various attack sites. The tracker looked exhausted, his clothes stained with travel dirt and his eyes carrying the haunted expression of someone who'd witnessed things that defied understanding. Show us, Adrian commanded without preamble. Eric spread several items across the table. Torn fabric, strange crystals that pulsed with unnatural light, and what appeared to be pages torn from an old journal. The corruption affecting the rogues is definitely magical in nature, Eric began. But it's not random curse work or wild magic. It's deliberate, targeted, and it's designed specifically to hunt Royal Omega bloodline. Aaron's breath caught. What? Eric pointed to the crystals. These were embedded in several of the corrupted rogues. They act as tracking beacons, but only activate in proximity to Royal Omega energy signatures. The rogues aren't just attacking randomly. They're being drawn to you like moths to flame. How is that possible? Adrian demanded. Royal Omega bloodline has been extinct for centuries. Who would have the knowledge to create tracking magic for something that supposedly doesn't exist? Someone who knew it wasn't actually extinct. Eric picked up the journal pages. I found these in an abandoned camp about 50 miles from here. The camp had been used recently within the past week, and these pages... He hesitated. They're from a journal detailing the purge, written by one of the people who participated. Horror crawled through Aaron's stomach. Someone kept records of the genocide? Not just kept records, celebrated it. Eric's voice carried disgust. The writer describes hunting Royal Omega families, methodically eliminating bloodline members, and... He paused, his eyes meeting Aaron's, documenting which children were hidden rather than killed. The room went silent. Hidden? Aaron whispered. They knew some survived? According to this, a faction within the noble families argued that complete extinction was too risky. If Royal Omega abilities ever proved necessary for pack survival, having hidden bloodline members they could control would be strategically valuable. Eric's jaw tightened. So they took children, placed them with families who would raise them to believe they were normal Omegas, kept them weak, submissive, unaware of their heritage. A living bloodline bank, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet, ready to activate if needed, easy to eliminate if they became threats. Exactly. Eric pulled out another page. And there's a list. Names of families who received hidden Royal Omega children. Most of the entries are 300 years old, but... He pointed to the last entry. This one is only 23 years old. Aaron's hands shook as she took the page. The handwriting was neat, clinical, documenting the placement of a Royal Omega infant with a family named Boone, her name. They knew, she breathed. My entire life, someone knew what I was. They watched me. Kept me weak deliberately. And when your abilities manifested anyway, Eric continued, they activated the tracking magic, sent rogues to eliminate you before you could become a threat to their power structure. Adrian's entire body vibrated with barely contained rage. Who's behind this? The journal doesn't include names. The writer used codes and initials. But based on the noble families who benefited most from the purge, Eric pulled out a final document. I've narrowed it to 3 possible bloodlines still active in the territories. House Townsend, House Stokes, and House Bolton. The names hung in the air like accusations. All 3 families had members on the council. All 3 had opposed Aaron's presence, and one, House Bolton, included Sherry, who'd made her hatred of Aaron abundantly clear. We can't prove which family is actively involved, Nate said. The evidence is circumstantial. Moving against any of them without concrete proof would trigger political disaster. Then we get proof, Adrian said flatly. How? Whoever is behind this has successfully hidden their involvement for centuries. They're not going to reveal themselves easily. They already have. Adrian's eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence. By sending rogues directly at Erin, by creating tracking magic specific to her bloodline, they've shown their hand. They're desperate, and desperate enemies make mistakes. What are you thinking? Stanley asked. A trap. We give them what they want, an opportunity to eliminate Erin, but we control the circumstances, ensure her safety, and catch them in the act. Absolutely not, Erin said immediately. I'm not being used as bait. Adrian turned to her. You already are bait. Every moment you exist threatens their centuries-old conspiracy. The difference is whether we control the situation or wait for them to strike on their terms. He's right, Eric said reluctantly. The tracking magic is still active. They know exactly where you are at all times. It's only a matter of time before they try again. Then remove the tracking magic, Erin argued. We can't. It's tied to your bloodline, not external objects. As long as you're alive and your abilities are active, the magic will lead them to you. Erin looked around the room at faces that had become familiar over the past few days. Nate, whose steady presence had provided security. Stanley, whose tactical brilliance kept the pack safe. Eric, whose investigation had revealed truths that shattered her understanding of her own existence. And Adrian, whose mate bond wrapped around her heart with possessive certainty, whose determination to protect her warred constantly with his recognition that she needed to be more than just protected. If we do this, she said slowly, I'm not just standing there waiting to be attacked. I participate in planning. I have a say in how the trap is structured, and if something goes wrong, I defend myself. No one tries to prevent me from fighting. Adrian's jaw tightened, clearly hating every word, but after a long moment, he nodded. Agreed. Then we need to plan carefully, Stanley said. The location needs to seem vulnerable while actually being defensible. The timing needs to force their hand without giving them opportunity to prepare overwhelming force. And we need witnesses, proof that will stand up to council scrutiny. They spent the next hour planning. Eric suggested using the tracking magic's range limitations to predict when attackers would arrive. Nate proposed defensive positions that would appear weak while actually funneling enemies into kill zones. Stanley coordinated warrior placements that would provide backup without revealing the trap prematurely. Through it all, Erin felt the mate bond carrying Adrian's turbulent emotions, fear for her safety, fury at circumstances forcing this choice, and beneath it all, pride in her courage, despite how much the situation terrified him. Finally, they had a plan. We implement this tomorrow night, Adrian decided. That gives us time to position warriors and ensure everything is ready. Erin will be at the eastern clearing, apparently gathering herbs for the medical wing. She'll have guards nearby, but not obviously visible. When the attack comes, we document everything before intervening. And if they send more force than we anticipate? Erin asked. Then we adapt. But you're not facing anything alone. Adrian's eyes met hers. I'll be close. If anything goes wrong, I'll get to you in seconds. The meeting dispersed, leaving Erin and Adrian alone as twilight settled over the territory. They stood at the window, watching pack members move through the compound on evening duties. I'm scared, Erin admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you cautious. Adrian pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her in a protective embrace. But don't let it paralyze you. You're stronger than whatever they send. Am I? I barely understand these abilities. What if they manifest wrong? What if I can't control them when it matters? Then you do what you did 3 days ago, trust your instincts and survive. His hand came up to cup her face, tilting it toward his. You are Royal Omega bloodline, Erin. You survived centuries of conspiracy designed to keep you weak. You broke through conditioning that should have been unbreakable. And you're my mate, which means you have strength that even you don't fully recognize yet. The intensity in his eyes stole her breath. The mate bond pulled between them with undeniable force, and Erin found herself leaning into him without conscious decision. Adrian's control finally broke. He kissed her with desperate hunger, months of denied instinct pouring into the contact. Erin responded with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt as the mate bond sang between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Adrian pressed his forehead against hers. "After tomorrow," he said roughly, "after we've dealt with these enemies and proven your heritage beyond question, I'm completing this bond properly. I'm marking you, claiming you before the entire pack, and I'm never letting you out of my sight again." "That sounds extremely impractical for an alpha king." "I don't care." His arms tightened. "You've become more important than anything else, more important than politics, tradition, or rational decision-making. Adrian, I know it's too fast. I know the circumstances are impossible. I know we barely know each other beyond crisis situations." His eyes bore into hers. "I don't care. You're mine, and I'm yours, and after tomorrow, everyone will know it." Erin should have been terrified by the possessive certainty in his voice, should have protested the speed at which everything was happening, should have demanded more time, more normalcy, more chance to process everything that had changed in less than a week. Instead, she pulled him down for another kiss, because he was right. The bond was real. The connection between them transcended logic or careful planning, and whether she fully understood it or not, she wanted this, wanted him, with an intensity that matched his own. When they finally separated again, night had fallen completely. The compound lay quiet except for patrol movements and the distant sounds of pack life continuing around them. "Get some rest," Adrian said reluctantly. "Tomorrow will be dangerous, and you need to be at full strength." "Where will you be?" "Making sure every detail of the plan is perfect, making sure nothing can go wrong." His hand traced her jawline gently. "Making sure I don't lose you before we've even had a chance to truly begin." Erin caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. "You won't lose me." "We're doing this together, remember?" "Together," he agreed, though the fear in his eyes didn't diminish. As Erin made her way to her quarters, now luxurious rooms in the Alpha's residence rather than the medical wing, she passed pack members who bowed respectfully. The hostility from some had diminished slightly after the council meeting, though she could still feel suspicion and confusion through the pack bonds. They didn't know what to make of her, didn't know how to categorize an Omega who fought like an Alpha, who strengthened bonds they'd assumed were permanent fixtures, who their king claimed as mate despite centuries of tradition, suggesting it was impossible. She didn't know what to make of herself either, but tomorrow, she would step into a trap designed to draw out enemies who'd orchestrated genocide and hidden her heritage for their own purposes. She would fight for her right to exist, to claim the abilities that were her birthright, to stand beside an Alpha King who saw her as more than just an Omega to be protected. And she would prove that Royal Omega bloodline wasn't extinct. It was just getting started. Chapter 6. Betrayal Revealed. The eastern clearing looked deceptively peaceful in the late afternoon sun. Erin knelt among the medicinal herbs that grew abundantly in this section of territory, her basket half filled with plants Diane had requested. To any observer, she appeared to be a simple Omega, performing her assigned duties, vulnerable, alone, focused on her task rather than her surroundings. In reality, every sense was heightened to painful intensity. Through the pack bonds, she could feel Adrian positioned 300 yards north, his wolf form hidden in the dense underbrush. Stanley and his warriors were scattered around the clearing's perimeter, invisible to casual observation, but ready to converge within seconds. Eric monitored the tracking magic's fluctuations, ready to signal when corrupted rogues entered the area. And Nate remained closest of all, positioned in a tree directly overhead, where his scent would be masked by foliage and wind direction. They'd been waiting for 2 hours. Erin's knees ached from kneeling, and nervous energy made her hands tremble slightly as she plucked herbs with mechanical precision. What if they don't come, she thought. What if they suspect a trap? But even as the doubt formed, she felt it. A disturbance in the pack bonds, like ripples spreading across still water. The tracking magic was activating, drawing corrupted wolves toward her location with undeniable force. "They're coming," Eric's voice whispered through the bond network Adrian had helped her access. Multiple signatures, moving fast from the southwest. Erin forced herself to continue her herb gathering, to show no awareness of approaching danger. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her breathing steady, her movements calm. The first rogue emerged from the tree line 60 seconds later. It was massive, larger than the corrupted wolves from previous attacks, its muscles bulging with unnatural enhancement. Dark veins pulsed beneath its fur, and its eyes burned with the now familiar madness of magical corruption. But unlike the mindless creatures from before, this one moved with calculated precision. It circled the clearing slowly, studying her with intelligence that made Erin's skin crawl. Testing for traps, she realized, looking for signs of ambush. She made herself appear frightened, not difficult given her genuine fear, and slowly stood, backing toward the clearing's center while clutching her basket like a shield. The rogue's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Then 5 more emerged from different directions. 6 total, Stanley's voice came through the bond. "All enhanced. Waiting on your signal, Your Majesty." "Not yet," Adrian responded, though Erin could feel the barely controlled rage vibrating through his consciousness. "We need proof of who sent them." The rogues began closing in with coordinated movements that confirmed they were being actively controlled. Erin dropped her basket, letting herbs scatter across the ground as she shifted her stance to something more defensive. "Who sent you?" she called out, her voice carrying clearly. "Who's controlling you?" The largest rogue's eyes flickered, a moment of clarity breaking through the corruption. Its jaw worked as if trying to form words that its transformed body couldn't quite produce. "Family," it managed to force out. "Old blood, purge." Then its eyes glazed over again as whatever magic controlled it reasserted dominance. But those few words were enough. "Did everyone hear that?" Adrian demanded through the bond. "Confirmed," Eric replied, recording everything through bond memory. "The council can verify." The rogues lunged simultaneously. Erin's shift happened in a heartbeat, her wolf form emerging with the fluid ease she'd grown accustomed to over the past few days. She met the first attacker with claws that had grown longer and sharper since her abilities awakened, her strike opening its throat before it could adjust to her speed. But 5 remained, and they'd learned from previous encounters. They didn't cluster together or attack predictably. Instead, they spread out, forcing her to divide her attention while they probed for weaknesses. "Now," Adrian commanded, warriors exploded from concealment around the clearing's perimeter. Nate dropped from overhead, his massive wolf form crushing one rogue before it could react. Stanley and his fighters converged from multiple angles, their coordination speaking of years fighting together. But even with reinforcements, the enhanced rogues proved formidable opponents. Their magical corruption granted strength that exceeded normal wolf capabilities, and their pain tolerance allowed them to continue fighting despite injuries that should have been debilitating. Erin found herself fighting back-to-back with Adrian, their wolves moving in perfect synchronization as the mate bond allowed them to anticipate each other's movements. When she dodged left, he covered her right. When he pressed forward, she protected his flank. Together, they carved through corrupted flesh with lethal efficiency. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it ended, 6 dead rogues lay scattered across the clearing, their bodies already beginning to dissolve as the corruption magic faded. Adrian shifted to human form, breathing heavily. "Eric, secure the remains before they're completely destroyed. We need physical evidence." "Already on it," Eric called back, moving quickly to collect samples. Erin shifted as well, accepting the clothes Nate handed her with grateful nod. Her body ached with familiar soreness from combat, but the wounds were already healing with supernatural speed. "That was almost too easy," Stanley observed, his expression troubled. 6 enhanced rogues should have put up more resistance." "Agreed," Adrian said, "which means—" A scream cut through the air. Every wolf in the clearing tensed, heads snapping toward the sound's origin. Through the pack bonds, Erin felt sudden panic erupting from the main compound, multiple sources, overlapping terror and pain. Distraction, she realized with horror. The attack here was a distraction. "Move," Adrian commanded, already shifting and racing back toward the compound. They ran full speed through the forest, covering ground with desperate urgency. As they approached the compound, sounds of battle became audible, snarls, screams, the clash of wolves fighting in deadly earnest. They burst into the central courtyard to find chaos. More corrupted rogues had infiltrated the compound, but these weren't targeting random pack members. They moved with specific purpose, driving toward a single location, the medical wing where Diane treated wounded wolves. And leading the attack were wolves Aaron recognized. Pack members, their eyes glazed with the same magical corruption that affected the rogues. "They've turned our own people," Nate breathed in horror. Adrian's roar of fury shook the compound. He launched himself at the nearest corrupted pack member, his alpha authority crashing outward in a wave of dominance that should have forced submission. The corrupted wolf barely slowed. Whatever magic controlled them was strong enough to override even an alpha king's command. Aaron raced toward the medical wing, her wolf form covering ground in powerful leaps. She could feel Diane through the pack bonds, terrified but alive, barricaded inside with several wounded wolves who couldn't defend themselves. 3 corrupted wolves broke away from the main attack to intercept her. Aaron met them without slowing, her claws and teeth finding vulnerable points with precision that still surprised her despite days of training. The Royal Omega abilities flowing through her veins granted not just strength, but knowledge. Instinctive understanding of anatomy, of weak points, of killing strikes that ended threats efficiently. She reached the medical wing's entrance to find the door partially breached, corrupted wolves clawing their way through the reinforced barrier. "No." The word echoed through her consciousness with absolute authority. Power surged outward from her core, not physical strength, but something else, something that touched the pack bonds themselves. The corrupted wolves froze mid-attack. Aaron felt the foreign magic controlling them, dark, twisted corruption that wrapped around their consciousness like parasitic vines, and she felt her own abilities reaching out, touching those bonds, trying to burn away the corruption with pure Royal Omega energy. "Leave them," she commanded, pouring will through the pack network. "Release them." For a moment, the corruption magic resisted. Then it began to dissolve, burning away beneath the intensity of her focus. The corrupted pack members collapsed, their eyes clearing, as control released them back to their own minds. But the effort left Aaron gasping, her strength draining rapidly. She'd never attempted anything like that before, never tried to actively manipulate pack bonds to counter hostile magic. Adrian appeared at her side, his arms catching her as her legs gave out. "What did you do?" "Freed them. The corruption. I could feel it through the bonds, could see how it controlled them." Aaron's vision swam. "But there's more. The magic has a source. Someone nearby is maintaining it." "Where?" Aaron focused through her exhaustion, following the threads of corruption magic back to their origin. They led toward the compound's administrative building, toward rooms that housed visiting dignitaries and council members during formal sessions. "There," she pointed. "Second floor, western wing." Adrian's expression turned lethal. "Stanley, secure the medical wing. Nate, with me. We're ending this now." They raced toward the administrative building, more warriors joining them as word spread through the pack. By the time they reached the target location, a dozen elite fighters surrounded the area, cutting off any escape routes. Adrian kicked open the door to the Western Wing's largest suite. Inside, Carol Townsend stood beside a table covered in magical implements, crystals similar to those Eric had found, ritual components, and an open journal identical to the one discovered at the abandoned camp. He looked up at their entrance without surprise, his expression cold and calculating. "Your Majesty," he said calmly, "I wondered how long it would take you to trace the source." "You're behind this," Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. "You've been controlling the corrupted rogues. You turned pack members against their own." "I've been protecting pack tradition," Carol corrected, "protecting the natural order that's kept our territories stable for centuries." By committing genocide? By hiding Royal Omega children and trying to eliminate them when they became inconvenient? By ensuring that power remains where it belongs, with true alphas, not genetic anomalies that threaten everything we've built. Carol's gaze shifted to Erin. She should never have been allowed to exist. Her very presence destabilizes pack hierarchy. Her presence strengthens bonds that have been weakening under your council's leadership, Adrian countered. She saved pack members this morning, protected those who couldn't defend themselves. That's what real power looks like, not your corrupt manipulation. You're blinded by the mate bond, Carol said dismissively. Give it time. You'll see that keeping her alive endangers everyone. The only danger here is you. Adrian took a step forward. Carol Townsend, I charge you with treason, conspiracy to commit murder, use of forbidden magic, and crimes against the pack. You will be tried before the full council. I don't think so. Carol raised his hand, and the magical implements on the table began to glow with intense light. Power surged outward, not targeting Adrian or the warriors, but reaching toward every corrupted bond thread still active in the compound. I've spent decades building this network, Carol said, his voice growing strained as he channeled massive amounts of magic. Decades preparing for the day when Royal Omega bloodline might resurface. You think I'd let it all end with simple arrest? The corruption magic intensified, spreading like wildfire through vulnerable pack bonds. Wolves across the compound began collapsing, their minds overwhelmed by the hostile energy flooding their consciousness. Stop, Adrian commanded, his alpha authority crashing outward. But Carol just smiled. Too late. Either she dies, or everyone connected to pack bonds dies with her. Your choice, Your Majesty. Erin felt the corruption spreading, felt pack members suffering, as hostile magic burned through their connections. Felt the impossible choice Carol was forcing, her life in exchange for theirs. Through the mate bond, she felt Adrian's anguish. His desperate need to protect her, warring with his responsibility to protect all pack members. The horrible calculation of one life versus hundreds. No, Erin thought. There has to be another way. She reached through the pack bonds again, but this time she didn't try to burn away the corruption. Instead, she embraced it, pulled it toward herself, drawing the hostile magic away from vulnerable pack members and into her own consciousness. Pain exploded through her mind as corruption magic flooded her system. It burned like acid, trying to overwhelm her will, to take control of her thoughts and actions. But she was Royal Omega bloodline, and her abilities didn't just strengthen bonds, they purified them. Erin let the corruption flow into her, then transformed it, used her own energy to burn away the hostile magic's malevolence, leaving only neutral power that dissipated harmlessly into the atmosphere. It was agonizing, like swallowing poison and trying to digest it before it killed her, but it worked. Carol's expression shifted from triumph to shock as his carefully constructed corruption network began collapsing. That's impossible. No wolf can metabolize corruption magic. I'm not just any wolf, Erin managed through gritted teeth. I'm what you tried to eliminate, what you were afraid might exist. She pulled harder, drawing every thread of corruption toward herself. Pack members across the compound gasped in relief as hostile magic released them. The corrupted wolves Carol had turned regained their own minds, confusion and horror replacing mindless obedience. But the effort was destroying her. Erin could feel her strength failing as her consciousness fragmenting under the assault of so much hostile magic. Too much, her wolf warned. Can't process it all. We'll die. Better me than them, Erin thought distantly. Then Adrian was there, his hands gripping her shoulders, his voice cutting through the pain. Stop! You're killing yourself! Pack members are free. You've already freed them. Now stop before you burn yourself out completely. Erin tried to release the corruption magic, but it had latched onto her consciousness like a parasite. She'd drawn so much of it into herself that it had gained momentum, continuing to flow toward her, even as she desperately tried to push it away. I can't, she gasped. It won't stop. Adrian's eyes met hers, and she felt his decision through the mate bond a heartbeat before he acted. He pulled her against his chest and completed their bond in the most primal way possible. He marked her. His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the claiming mark sending a surge of pure mate bond energy through her entire system. The foreign magic of their completed bond clashed with the corruption she'd absorbed, the two forces warring inside her consciousness. But mate bond magic was older, stronger, more fundamental than Carol's constructed corruption. It burned through the hostile energy like sunlight through shadow, purifying what Aaron hadn't been able to cleanse alone. The corruption magic shattered. Aaron collapsed against Adrian, only his arms keeping her upright. Through fading vision, she saw Carol stagger, his magical implements exploding as their power source was severed. "Impossible," he whispered. "The mate bond shouldn't... Royal Omegas can't..." "You never understood what they really were," Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. "You saw them as threats. But Royal Omegas were meant to balance alphas, to purify corruption, to strengthen bonds that could be twisted for evil purposes." He held Aaron tighter. "She just proved everything your genocide was based on was a lie." Carol lunged toward his magical implements, clearly trying to activate some final contingency. But Nate was faster, his wolf form slamming into the council member and pinning him to the ground. "It's over," Adrian declared. "Stanley, secure him. Make sure he can't access any magic. Diane," he looked toward the door where the healer had just arrived. "She needs help." "Bring her to the medical wing," Diane commanded, already moving toward them. As Adrian lifted Aaron into his arms, she felt the completed mate bond settling into place, a permanent connection that went deeper than anything she'd experienced before. Through it, she could sense Adrian's relief, his residual terror, his absolute certainty that claiming her had been the right choice, regardless of circumstances. "You marked me," she whispered. "I saved you." Adrian's eyes blazed with protective ferocity. "And I'd do it again. I'd do anything to keep you alive." "Not very proper. Didn't ask permission. I'll spend the rest of our lives making it up to you." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, starting with ensuring you never have to face something like that alone again. As they moved through the compound toward medical care, Aaron saw pack members emerging from buildings, their expressions showing shock, confusion, and growing understanding. They'd felt what happened through the bonds, felt her draw away corruption, felt the mate bond's completion, felt power that proved Royal Omega bloodline wasn't just legend. The whispers started immediately, but this time they carried awe instead of hostility, because she'd just saved them all, and everyone knew it. Chapter 7. The Luna Trial. Aaron woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the immediate awareness that everything had changed. The mate bond hummed between her and Adrian with undeniable permanence, the marking on her neck a tender reminder of how it had been completed. Through the connection, she could feel him nearby, not in the room, but close enough that his presence wrapped around her consciousness like a protective embrace. She sat up carefully, expecting pain from the corruption magic she'd absorbed. Instead, she felt stronger than ever, as if purifying the hostile energy had somehow enhanced her own abilities rather than depleting them. Diane entered moments later, her expression showing professional assessment mixed with something approaching wonder. "How do you feel?" the healer asked, beginning her examination without preamble. "Better than I should. The corruption magic is completely gone from your system. You metabolized it somehow, transformed it into neutral energy that dissipated harmlessly." Diane's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals and examining the fresh marking on Aaron's neck. "The mate bond completion accelerated the process, but you were already managing the purification on your own. Remarkable. What happened after I collapsed?" "Carol has been secured in the cells beneath the compound. The council called an emergency session for this afternoon. They want full accounting of yesterday's events." Diane paused. "And they want to formally address your status as Luna." Aaron's stomach tightened. "Because Adrian marked me. Because you saved the entire pack by absorbing corruption magic that would have killed hundreds of wolves." Diane's expression softened. Because you proved every assumption about Royal Omega weakness was wrong. Because you demonstrated exactly why your bloodline was considered sacred. A knock interrupted them. Adrian entered, his eyes immediately finding Aaron with the intensity of a mate, confirming his partner's safety. The bond between them surged with his relief. "You're awake," he said, crossing to her side in 3 long strides. "How long was I unconscious?" 14 hours, long enough for me to age several years from worry. His hand cupped her face gently, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "How do you feel? Strong? Confused? Nervous about this council meeting?" "You don't have to attend if you're not ready." "Yes, I do." Aaron met his gaze steadily. "Carol tried to kill me and control the pack through corruption magic. The council needs to hear what happened from both of us, and if they're going to formally address my status as Luna—" She trailed off, uncertainty flooding the bond. Adrian's expression gentled. "The marking was necessary to save your life," he said quietly, "but I should have asked first. Should have given you choice in how our bond was completed. I'm sorry for taking that from you." "You saved me," Aaron replied, echoing his words from yesterday. "And I'm not sorry about the bond, just nervous about what comes next." "What comes next is the council officially recognizing you as my mate and Luna. Then we deal with the political aftermath of one of their senior members being arrested for treason." "Will they actually convict him?" Aaron asked. "He's from one of the most powerful noble families." "They will if they want to avoid rebellion. The pack members he corrupted remember what happened, remember feeling his magic controlling them against their will. Public opinion has shifted dramatically in your favor." Adrian's smile held grim satisfaction. Carol thought he was protecting tradition. Instead, he proved exactly why that tradition needed to change. The council chamber felt different this time. Where before Aaron had stood as an outsider being evaluated, now she walked beside Adrian as his marked mate. The bond between them was visible to every wolf with supernatural senses, a permanent connection that couldn't be denied or dismissed. The council members who filed in showed varying reactions. Vonda's expression carried thoughtful assessment. Jimmy looked genuinely pleased. Others showed calculation or barely concealed hostility. Sherry's seat remained conspicuously empty. According to Nate's intelligence report, she'd left the territory immediately after Carol's arrest, claiming urgent family business. "This council is called to address charges of treason against Carol Townsend," Vonda began, her aged voice carrying authority despite her lack of alpha blood, "and to formally recognize the completed mate bond between Alpha King, Adrian Robertson, and Aaron Boone." "Before we proceed," one of the newer council members, a beta named Morris Stewart, spoke up. "I want clarification. The mate bond was completed under emergency circumstances. Should such a bond be recognized when it wasn't entered into freely?" "Are you suggesting I forced the bond?" Adrian asked dangerously. "I'm suggesting the circumstances were coercive. She was dying from corruption magic exposure. You acted to save her life, which is commendable, but—" "But nothing," Aaron interrupted, her voice steady despite nerves. "The marking saved my life, yes, but I don't regret it. I accept the mate bond freely, both its completion and its implications." "Even though you barely know each other?" Morris pressed. "Even though you've been in this territory less than a week?" "The mate bond doesn't operate on human timelines," Adrian said coldly. "It exists or it doesn't. Whether we'd known each other for years or days makes no difference to its fundamental truth." "Perhaps not to wolves ruled by instinct," Morris replied, "but to those of us who value rational decision-making." "Rational decision-making?" Nate's voice cut through the chamber. Carol Townsend made rational decisions for decades. He rationally decided to hide Royal Omega children, rationally chose to corrupt pack members and send them to kill their own, rationally built a magical network designed to commit genocide if Royal Omega bloodline ever surfaced. Tell me, counselor, how did his rationality serve the pack? Silence fell. Morris's face flushed, but he had no rebuttal. Let's address the primary charges, Vonda said, steering the discussion back on track. Carol stands accused of treason, conspiracy to murder, use of forbidden magic, and corruption of pack bonds. The evidence? Stanley stepped forward with documentation, Eric's investigation findings, physical evidence from the attack sites, testimony from pack members who'd been corrupted, and most damning of all, the journal pages detailing the purge and subsequent monitoring of hidden Royal Omega children. As the evidence was presented, Aaron watched council members' expressions shift from skepticism to shock to horror. Even those who'd opposed her presence couldn't deny the systematic nature of Carol's crimes. This suggests House Townsend has been monitoring Royal Omega bloodline for centuries, Jimmy observed, studying the journal entries. Were other families involved? The investigation is ongoing, Eric replied. But preliminary evidence suggests at least 2 other noble families had knowledge of the hidden children, even if they weren't actively involved in the corruption magic. Which families? Vonda demanded. House Stokes and House Bolton. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. 2 council members from those families shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Having knowledge isn't the same as participating in treason. One of them, Lance Holt from House Stokes, protested. My family may have known about the hidden bloodline program, but we didn't support Carol's methods. You knew Royal Omega children were being hidden and monitored, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. You knew they were kept weak and submissive deliberately. You knew that if their abilities manifested, they'd be eliminated, and you said nothing. We had no proof Carol would actually... You had centuries to speak up. Centuries to question whether hiding an entire bloodline was ethical. Centuries to consider what it meant that your power and position depended on Royal Omega's remaining suppressed. Adrian's eyes glowed with wolf. Your silence makes you complicit. Your Majesty, Vonda interrupted carefully, while I don't dispute the moral failure of remaining silent, we must be cautious about expanding charges too broadly. If we accuse every family with knowledge of the program, we risk fracturing the council entirely. Perhaps the council needs fracturing, Adrian replied. Perhaps we need to rebuild from wolves who don't base their authority on genocide. A noble sentiment, but impractical. We're already facing attacks from corrupted rogues and whoever their true master is. Internal conflict weakens us further. The reminder of external threats shifted the chamber's energy. Council members exchanged glances, clearly weighing political maneuvering against practical security concerns. What do you propose? Jimmy asked Vonda. Carol faces full punishment for his crimes. Execution seems appropriate given the magnitude of treason. Houses Stokes and Bolton face probation and oversight, with understanding that future misconduct will result in removal from council positions. Vonda's gaze swept the chamber. And we formally recognize Erin as Luna, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. She hasn't completed Luna training, Morris objected. Pack law was written assuming Lunas would be carefully selected from noble families with years of preparation, Vonda interrupted. But this situation is unprecedented. She's Royal Omega bloodline, marked by our Alpha King, and has already demonstrated capabilities that exceed most trained Lunas. I propose we adapt tradition rather than slavishly following it. Adapt how? Lance asked warily. Luna trial, Vonda said. An ancient practice we haven't used in generations, but one that's still technically part of pack law. If Erin can pass the trials, she's recognized as Luna with full authority. If she fails, the mate bond remains, but her status as Luna is delayed pending proper training. Erin's stomach dropped. What kind of trials? Tests of strength, wisdom, and pack connection, Vonda explained. Traditionally, they were used when an alpha claimed a mate from outside established bloodlines, a way to prove the outsider deserved Luna status. The trials haven't been invoked in over a century because we've had stable mate selection from noble families, but the law remains valid. This is ridiculous, Adrian said flatly. She's already proven herself multiple times over. To you, yes. To those of us who witnessed her actions, yes, but not to the broader pack population. Vonda's expression was surprisingly sympathetic. Your Majesty, you marked her under emergency circumstances. Many pack members are confused about how to process an Omega Luna. The trials would give her opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities publicly, building support that will be crucial for her authority. Or they'll give your political enemies opportunity to undermine her through impossible standards, Adrian countered. The trials are standardized, the same tests every Luna in our history would have faced if challenged. No special requirements, no increased difficulty. Vonda looked at Aaron. The choice is yours. Accept Luna trial and potentially gain full recognition within days, or follow traditional training that could take months while your status remains contested. Aaron felt Adrian's protective fury through the bond, his desire to simply command the council to accept her without question. But she also felt his reluctant recognition that Vonda might be right, that proving herself publicly would build legitimacy that couldn't be achieved through alpha authority alone. What did the trials involve? She asked. 3 tests, traditionally completed over 3 days, Jimmy explained, pulling out an old text. First test, combat trial, where you face challengers who dispute your right to Luna status. Second test, wisdom trial, where you resolve complex pack disputes demonstrating judgment and fairness. Third test, bond trial, where you prove your connection to pack members and ability to strengthen their bonds. The combat trial worries me, Adrian said. Given the hostility some pack members feel. Combat trial has strict rules, Vonda interrupted. Challenges must be fair fights, no lethal force, and the Luna candidate can refuse challenges she deems inappropriate. It's designed to test courage and strength, not kill the candidate. And if I pass all 3 trials? Aaron asked. You're recognized as Luna immediately, with full authority and pack support. Your status becomes unquestionable. Aaron studied the council members, feeling their emotions through the pack bonds. Some genuinely wanted to see her succeed. Others hoped she'd fail, validating their beliefs about Omega inadequacy. Still others simply wanted the political uncertainty resolved one way or another. But beneath all the individual agendas, she felt something else. The pack itself, watching through their representatives, waiting to see if this impossible Omega could truly be their Luna. I accept, Aaron said clearly. I'll complete the Luna trials. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezing tight. Through the bond, she felt his pride mixed with fear for what the trials might demand. So ordered, Vonda declared. The Luna trials will begin tomorrow at dawn. All pack members are invited to witness. May the moon goddess guide you, Aaron Boone. As the council adjourned, pack members began filing out with excited whispers. News of the trials would spread quickly, drawing wolves from across the territory to witness an event that hadn't occurred in living memory. Adrian pulled Aaron aside as the chamber emptied. You don't have to do this. I can find another way. No, you can't. Not without spending months fighting political battles that distract from finding whoever's really controlling the corrupted rogues. Aaron met his eyes. Vonda is right. If I prove myself publicly, it ends the question of my status. Lets us focus on actual threats instead of internal politics. The combat trial. I've fought 30 rogues and survived. I can handle pack members in fair challenges. It's not your capability I'm worried about. It's the emotional toll of having to prove yourself to wolves who should accept you based on the mate bond alone. Aaron's heart warmed at his concern. I've spent my entire life proving myself to people who didn't believe I was capable of anything. At least this time, I'm proving something true. Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that conveyed protection and support. Then I'll be there for every trial, every moment. And if anyone crosses the line from fair challenge to genuine threat, you'll let me handle it, Aaron interrupted firmly. Because part of proving I can be Luna is showing I don't need you to fight my battles. I know. He pressed a kiss to her marked neck, the gesture sending warmth through their bond. Doesn't mean I have to like it. As they left the council chamber, Erin noticed pack members watching with undisguised curiosity. Some showed hostility, others fascination. Still others the careful neutrality of wolves waiting to see which way political winds would blow. Tomorrow, she would face the first trial, would prove to all of them that an Omega could be Luna. Or she would fail, validating centuries of prejudice about Omega weakness. The weight of that choice pressed against her shoulders. But through the mate bond, she felt Adrian's unwavering confidence, his absolute certainty that she would succeed. And slowly, hesitantly, she began to believe it herself. She was royal Omega bloodline. She'd survived genocide, broken through conditioning designed to keep her weak, saved pack members from corruption magic that should have killed them all. She could pass 3 trials. She had to. Because too many things, her status, her authority, her ability to protect the pack she was coming to care for, depended on proving that impossible bonds could create impossible strength. Starting tomorrow at dawn. Chapter 8. War Declared. Dawn broke over Silvercrest territory with unusual stillness, as if the land itself held its breath in anticipation. Erin stood at the center of the combat arena, a circular clearing marked with ancient stones that had witnessed countless challenges over the centuries. Pack members ringed the space in dense crowds, their emotions washing over her through the bonds like waves: curiosity, skepticism, hope, hostility, and beneath it all, collective anticipation for something unprecedented. An Omega facing Luna trials. It had never happened before. Adrian stood at the arena's edge with his elite warriors, his presence a steady anchor through the mate bond. Erin could feel his barely controlled tension, his wolf pacing restlessly despite his outward calm. Vonda stepped forward as the appointed trial master, her aged voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. "The first trial begins," she announced. "Combat trial, as established by pack law and ancient tradition. Any wolf who disputes Erin Boone's right to Luna status may issue challenge. The candidate may accept or refuse each challenge at her discretion. Challenges will be fair fights in wolf form, non-lethal, and will end when one party yields or is rendered unable to continue." She paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "Who among you challenges?" For a moment, no one moved. Then a large beta stepped forward, one of the warriors Erin vaguely recognized from compound patrols. "I am Benny Roberts," he declared. "I challenge the Omega's right to Luna status. No Omega has the strength to lead, and I'll prove it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Benny was known as a skilled fighter, strong enough to have earned his position among the warriors despite lacking alpha blood. "Do you accept this challenge?" Vonda asked Erin. "I do." Both shifted to wolf form. Benny's wolf was massive and scarred, his gray fur bristling with aggression. Erin's wolf was smaller but moved with fluid grace, her unusual silver-tipped fur gleaming in the morning light. They circled each other slowly. Benny moved first, lunging with speed that would have overwhelmed most Omegas. But Erin wasn't most Omegas. She dodged sideways, her claws raking his flank as he passed. Benny spun, surprised by her speed. He attacked again, more cautiously this time, trying to use his size advantage to force her into a corner. But Erin flowed around his attacks like water, striking from unexpected angles, using technique that compensated for her smaller size. The fight lasted 3 minutes. It ended with Benny on his back, Erin's jaws at his throat, her eyes boring into his with undeniable dominance. He yielded. The crowd's emotions shifted: surprise, reassessment, and from some quarters, growing respect. "Challenge defeated," Vonda declared. "Who else challenges?" 3 more wolves stepped forward in quick succession. A female beta who believed Omegas were too weak to make tactical decisions. A young alpha who thought the mate bond had clouded Adrian's judgment. An older warrior who simply wanted to test her mettle. Erin defeated all 3. Some fights were quick, her superior speed ending challenges before her opponents could adapt. Others dragged on as she faced wolves with genuine skill who forced her to dig deeper into abilities she was still discovering. but each fight ended the same way, with her opponent yielding, with the crowd's respect growing, with her confidence building. After the sixth victory, a long pause stretched across the arena. No one else stepped forward. Erin remained in the center, breathing heavily, but still standing strong, her silver-tipped fur stained with dirt and minor wounds that were already healing. "If there are no further challenges," Vonda began, "I challenge." The voice cut through the arena like a blade. The crowd parted, and Sherry Bolton stepped forward, her expression cold with hatred. Adrian tensed immediately, his wolf pushing forward. Sherry left the territory. She has no right to issue challenge. "I returned this morning specifically to challenge," Sherry replied coolly. "Pack law allows any member to issue challenge during Luna trials, regardless of their recent location. Or are you changing laws to protect your Omega?" "The challenge is valid," Vonda said reluctantly. "Do you accept?" Erin studied Sherry through her wolf's eyes. The other woman was a strong fighter from a noble bloodline, trained since childhood in combat techniques. More than that, her hatred burned through the pack bonds with intensity that suggested this wouldn't be a fair fight. Sherry would push boundaries, test the non-lethal rules, try to hurt Erin as badly as permitted. But refusing would validate every doubt about Omega capability. "I accept." Sherry's smile was predatory as she shifted. Her wolf was larger than Erin's, sleek and powerful, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. They circled each other. The arena had gone silent. Pack members sensing this challenge was different, more personal, more dangerous. Sherry attacked without warning, her assault brutal and coordinated. Where previous challengers had tested Erin's abilities, Sherry aimed to dominate through overwhelming force. Her strikes targeted vulnerable points with precision that spoke of intensive training. Erin defended desperately, her smaller size working against her for the first time. Sherry's raw power combined with technical skill was harder to counter than the straightforward strength of earlier opponents. A vicious bite caught Erin's shoulder, tearing through fur and muscle. She yelped in pain, stumbling back as blood flowed freely. Through the mate bond, she felt Adrian's barely restrained fury. He wanted to intervene, to stop the fight before Sherry could inflict more damage. But doing so would invalidate the trial, would prove Erin needed protection. "I can do this," Erin sent through their bond. "Trust me." She shifted her strategy, stopped trying to match Sherry's power, and instead used her Royal Omega abilities, extended her awareness through the pack bonds, feeling not just her opponent's physical position, but her emotional state, the hatred driving her attacks, the desperation beneath her confidence, the fear that if Erin succeeded, everything Sherry had worked toward would be lost. And Erin could feel something else. Sherry's wolf was strong, yes, but it lacked the connection to pack bonds that gave Erin her true advantage. Where Sherry fought alone, Erin fought with the unconscious support of every pack member watching, their energy feeding into her through the bonds she'd been strengthening since arrival. The realization changed everything. Erin stopped defending and attacked. Her strikes came faster now, powered not just by muscle, but by pack energy flowing through the bond network. She moved with coordination that seemed to predict Sherry's actions before they happened, her awareness of pack bonds allowing her to read micro-expressions and subtle shifts in her opponent's intentions. Sherry's confidence faltered. She pushed harder, attacking with increased ferocity, but Erin met every strike with perfect counters. The fight shifted decisively. Sherry on the defensive now, struggling against an opponent who fought with capabilities she couldn't match. Finally, Erin saw her opening. She ducked beneath Sherry's guard and swept her legs, sending the larger wolf crashing to the ground. Before Sherry could recover, Erin was on top of her, jaws at her throat, claws pressed against vulnerable spots. "Yield!" Erin growled, the word barely intelligible through wolf vocal cords, but unmistakable in intent. For a long moment, Sherry refused. Pride and hatred warred in her eyes. Then finally, the reality of defeat forced submission. "I yield," she forced out. Erin released her and stepped back, shifting to human form. Around the arena, pack members erupted in shocked conversation. Several were openly staring at her with expressions approaching awe. She'd just defeated one of their strongest fighters, and Omega had beaten a noble-born warrior who'd never lost a challenge. Vonda's expression showed carefully controlled surprise. Challenge defeated. Are there any further challenges to the Omega's combat capability? Silence answered her. No one else stepped forward. Then the combat trial is complete, Vonda declared. Aaron Boone has proven strength worthy of Luna status. The second trial, Wisdom Trial, will commence after midday rest period. As pack members began dispersing, Adrian was at Aaron's side immediately, his hands gentle as he examined her wounded shoulder. "You're hurt," he said, his voice tight with residual fear. "It's already healing." Aaron watched her flesh knit together with supernatural speed. "I'm fine." "You shouldn't have had to prove yourself through combat. You shouldn't have faced 6 challenges." 7, Aaron corrected with faint smile. "And yes, I should have." "They needed to see I wasn't weak, needed to witness that an Omega could fight and win." Adrian pulled her close, mindful of her injuries. "You were incredible, terrifying, and incredible." "I could feel the pack bonds supporting me," Aaron said softly, "feeding energy through the connections. It's like they helped me win without even knowing it." "That's the Royal Omega abilities manifesting more strongly," Diane observed, approaching with medical supplies. "You're learning to draw on pack strength through the bond network. No wonder the noble families wanted your bloodline eliminated. That kind of power challenges their monopoly on authority." As Diane treated Aaron's remaining injuries, Nate jogged over with urgent expression. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Scouts just reported unusual movement at the northern border. Large force approaching, too organized to be random rogues." Adrian's entire posture shifted to combat readiness. "How large?" "At least 50 wolves, possibly more. They're flying territorial banners." "Which territory?" "Multiple territories. It's a coalition force." Ice shot through Aaron's veins. "They're coming here? Now?" "Appears so. They'll reach our borders within the hour." Nate's expression was grim. "Sire, this looks like an organized response to something, like they planned this." "Planned a response to Aaron's presence," Adrian said darkly. "Word must have spread about Royal Omega bloodline surviving. Other territories are taking action before we can consolidate power." "Or they're coming to eliminate the threat," Stanley added, joining the group. "If noble families in other territories also participated in the purge, they'll see Aaron as existential danger to their authority." "How many warriors can we mobilize?" Adrian demanded. 40 battle-ready wolves immediately, another 20 within the hour if we pull from patrol duty." "Against 50 confirmed enemies, possibly more." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Not favorable odds." "We could request they state their intentions before assuming hostile action," Jimmy suggested, having approached during the discussion. "Perhaps they're here for diplomatic reasons." "Diplomatic missions don't require coalition forces of 50 warriors," Nate replied. "This is an intimidation display at best. Invasion? Preparation at worst." Aaron felt her earlier triumph evaporating as new crisis materialized. She'd passed the combat trial, but what good was proving her strength if enemies arrived to destroy her before the remaining trials could be completed? "Postpone the wisdom trial," Adrian decided. "All warriors to defensive positions. Aaron stays in the compound's secure location." "No," Aaron interrupted. Adrian turned to her, exasperation clear. "This isn't negotiable. If they're here for you, then hiding proves their point, proves I'm a weakness that requires protection rather than an asset that strengthens the pack." Aaron met his gaze steadily. "You said earlier I was terrifying. Let me show these coalition wolves exactly how terrifying an Royal Omega can be when defending her territory." "She's right," Vonda said quietly. "If Aaron hides during the first major threat after combat trial completion, it undermines everything she just proved. The pack needs to see their potential, Luna standing strong against external enemies." "The pack needs their Luna alive," Adrian countered. I won't take unnecessary risks, Aaron promised, but I won't hide either. Compromise. I stay with you and the elite warriors, protected but visible. I use my abilities to strengthen our defensive bonds if fighting starts, but I don't cower in a bunker while others face danger meant for me. Through their mate bond, she felt Adrian's internal struggle. Every alpha instinct screamed at him to protect his mate at any cost, but his rational mind recognized the political necessity of showing strength rather than weakness. Fine, he finally agreed. But if I say run, you run. No arguments, no heroics. Understood? Understood. Then let's meet these coalition wolves. Adrian's expression turned predatory. And remind them why attacking Silvercrest territory has always been a fatal mistake. The northern border came into view within 30 minutes of forced march. Adrian's warriors spread into defensive formation, their positioning designed to appear smaller than their actual numbers, while maintaining tactical flexibility. The approaching coalition force was clearly visible now, at least 60 wolves in coordinated formation, their various territorial banners identifying participants from 5 different packs, all territories that had historically aligned with traditional noble families. This wasn't random aggression. This was organized response by families who'd likely participated in or benefited from the original purge. The coalition force stopped just outside Silvercrest borders, maintaining the technical peace of not crossing into another territory's land without permission. A large alpha stepped forward, a wolf Aaron didn't recognize, but whose bearing suggested significant authority. Adrian shifted to human form, and after a moment's hesitation, Aaron did the same. Around them, warriors remained in wolf form, ready for combat, but not initiating aggression. I am Alpha King Adrian Robertson of Silvercrest territory, Adrian called out clearly. You've brought an armed force to my borders without notification or request for diplomatic access. State your intentions. The coalition Alpha shifted to human form as well. He was older than Adrian, his hair gray at the temples, his body marked with scars that spoke of decades fighting. I am Jacob Andrews, representing the Northern Coalition Council, he replied formally. We're here regarding credible intelligence that Royal Omega bloodline has surfaced in your territory. Intelligence that you've claimed this Omega as mate and intend to recognize her as Luna. And that concerns your coalition how? Royal Omega bloodline was declared extinct, and their genetic line terminated for the security of all territories. Their abilities disrupted pack hierarchies, created instability, and threatened established order. Jacob's gaze shifted to Aaron. If one has survived, she represents danger to every pack in the Northern Territories. She represents danger to your authority, Adrian corrected coldly. To the noble families who murdered her ancestors and built power on their extinction. We're here to prevent repetition of historical mistakes. The Royal Omega bloodline caused civil wars before their elimination. We won't allow that instability to return. You mean you won't allow power structures that don't favor you to emerge, Aaron said, her voice carrying clearly despite her lack of official authority. You murdered my bloodline because we made your rule inconvenient. Because pack members bonded to Royal Omegas didn't need traditional alphas as much. Because our abilities threatened your monopoly on strength. Jacob's expression hardened. Your abilities are why you must be eliminated. An Omega who can manipulate pack bonds, who can strengthen or weaken connections at will. That's too dangerous to permit existence. I strengthen bonds naturally, Aaron replied. I don't manipulate or weaken them. The only wolves I've harmed are those who attacked innocent pack members. So you claim, but history shows Royal Omegas eventually used their abilities for control, for building power bases that challenged legitimate authority. We won't wait for history to repeat. The threat was unmistakable. The coalition had come not for diplomacy, but for elimination. Adrian's wolf pushed forward, his eyes glowing with barely controlled rage. If you're declaring intention to attack pack members under my protection, then you're declaring war. Are you prepared for those consequences? "We're prepared to do what's necessary for territorial security," Jacob replied. "The Northern Coalition demands you surrender the Royal Omega for containment and evaluation. If you refuse, we'll consider it hostile action against all member territories." "Containment and evaluation," Adrian repeated flatly. "Interesting euphemisms for execution." "Her existence threatens stability. Her existence challenges your authority," Adrian interrupted. "And rather than adapt to changing realities, you've chosen genocide. Again." His voice dropped dangerously. "Well, you're not taking her. Not today. Not ever. If you want her, you'll have to go through me and every warrior in my pack. You're outnumbered almost 2-1. We're defending our territory against invaders. Historically, that's proven sufficient." Tension crackled between the two groups. Warriors on both sides shifted restlessly, preparing for combat that seemed increasingly inevitable. Then Aaron felt something through the pack bonds, a surge of energy from behind their lines, from the Silvercrest warriors watching this confrontation. They weren't afraid. They were angry, furious that external forces thought they could dictate what happened in Silvercrest territory, and their anger fed through the bonds into her awareness with crystalline clarity. "You came here expecting to intimidate us," Aaron said quietly. "Expected that threats in superior numbers would force compliance, but you've miscalculated." "Have we?" Jacob's smile was condescending. "An Omega making threats is amusing, but I'm not making threats. I'm making observations." Aaron extended her awareness through the pack bonds, feeling not just Silvercrest wolves, but touching the connections among the coalition forces. "Your coalition is fragile. 5 territories united by fear of what I represent, but not by genuine loyalty to each other. You're suspicious of your allies, wondering who'll betray whom when this conflict becomes costly." Jacob's smile faltered. "You can't possibly feel your bond networks? I can. That's what Royal Omegas do. We sense connections that others can't perceive." Aaron took a step forward. "And I sense doubt among your warriors. They came here believing I was a monster that needed elimination, but they see an Omega standing beside her mate, defending her territory. They're questioning whether genocide is really justified." "Enough," Jacob snarled. "Your psychological games won't— They're not games. They're truth." Aaron looked past him to the coalition warriors. "I'm not your enemy. I'm not trying to control or manipulate anyone. I just want to exist. To use abilities that are my birthright to protect people I care about. Is that really worth war?" Several coalition warriors shifted uncomfortably. Their bond networks were fracturing, doubt spreading through their ranks like cracks in ice. "You will surrender yourself," Jacob insisted, but his voice had lost certainty. "Or we will take you by force." "Try it," Adrian said simply. "Start a war over 1 Omega. Spend lives attacking wolves who've done nothing to threaten you. See how well your coalition holds together when casualties mount, defending noble families' political interests." The standoff stretched. Coalition warriors looked between their leaders and the defensive line of Silvercrest wolves. Through the bonds, Aaron felt their uncertainty growing, their reluctance to start combat over something that suddenly seemed less clear-cut than advertised. Then, hoofbeats approached from behind the coalition lines. A scout raced up to Jacob, whispering urgently. The Alpha's face went pale. "What?" he demanded loud enough for everyone to hear. "When?" "Within the last hour, sir," the scout replied. "Multiple territories are reporting coordinated attacks by corrupted rogues. Casualties are already significant." Ice flooded Aaron's veins. While the coalition had been positioning to attack her, their true enemy had struck their undefended territories. "This is your doing," Jacob accused, pointing at Aaron. "You've somehow coordinated these attacks. Don't be ridiculous," Adrian cut him off. "We've been defending against corrupted rogues for days. We arrested our own council member for orchestrating the corruption magic. If anything, your timing gave the real enemy perfect opportunity to strike while your forces were concentrated here." Jacob's jaw worked as the implications sank in. He'd left his territory vulnerable to make a political statement about Royal Omegas, and now people were dying because of his miscalculation. "We need to return," one of his allies said urgently. "Our families, if we leave now, we show weakness," Jacob argued. "If we stay, our people die," another alpha countered. "Whatever threat this Omega represents, it's not killing our pack members right now. The corrupted rogues are." The coalition forces were fragmenting, their united front collapsing under the weight of immediate crisis versus theoretical danger. One by one, alphas began ordering their warriors to return home, to defend their own territories against active threats, rather than pursuing elimination of someone who'd done them no direct harm. Within minutes, only Jacob remained with a handful of loyal warriors. "This isn't over," he said, but the declaration rang hollow. "Yes, it is," Adrian replied. "Go home, Jacob. Defend your people against real enemies instead of manufacturing threats to justify old prejudices." After a long moment, Jacob shifted and led his remaining warriors away, their retreat marking the coalition's complete failure. As the last enemies disappeared from view, Silvercrest warriors began celebrating their victory without combat. But Erin felt no triumph, only growing dread as she realized what the coordinated attacks really meant. "Someone wanted the coalition here," she said quietly. "Wanted our territories divided and vulnerable while corrupted rogues struck." "Carol's master," Adrian agreed grimly. "Whoever controls the corruption magic used our conflicts to create opportunities for devastating attacks. And we still don't know who they are." "No, but they've just revealed they have resources that span multiple territories. Intelligence networks capable of coordinating complex timing and willingness to spend lives to achieve their goals." Adrian's expression was grave. "Erin, we're not facing random rogues anymore. We're facing an organized enemy with strategic intelligence and significant power." "War," Stanley said bluntly. "Someone has declared war on all of us, and we've been too busy fighting each other to notice." As the implications settled over the assembled wolves, Erin felt the mate bond carrying Adrian's complex emotions. Relief that immediate threat had passed without bloodshed, frustration that coalition stupidity had created vulnerabilities, and beneath it all, determination to identify and eliminate whoever was truly orchestrating the attacks. But first, she still had 2 trials to complete, because proving she deserved Luna status had just become more urgent than ever. They needed every advantage available to fight an enemy who operated from shadows while territories tore themselves apart. Starting with recognizing that Royal Omega abilities weren't threats to be eliminated. They were weapons to be wielded against enemies who thought genocide had eliminated their greatest obstacle to power. Chapter 9. The Final Battle. The Wisdom Trial took place in the Great Hall, with the entire pack assembled as witnesses. Erin stood before a table bearing the symbols of Luna authority, a silver circlet, an ancient text of pack law, and a ceremonial blade representing the Luna's duty to protect her people. Vonda presided over the proceedings with 3 complex disputes prepared to test judgment, fairness, and understanding of pack dynamics. But the atmosphere had changed dramatically since morning. News of the coordinated attacks on other territories had spread through Silvercrest like wildfire, along with word that Erin's presence at the border had somehow contributed to the coalition's retreat without bloodshed. Pack members who'd watched her trials with skepticism now studied her with reassessment. She wasn't just an Omega who could fight. She was someone who'd prevented war through abilities they were only beginning to understand. "The Wisdom Trial begins," Vonda announced. 3 disputes will be presented. The candidate must resolve each with fairness and wisdom befitting Luna authority. The first dispute involved 2 families arguing over territory rights to a valuable hunting ground. Both had legitimate historical claims, both had contributed to pack welfare, and both were too prideful to compromise. Traditional resolution would favor whichever family had stronger political connections, an outcome that would breed resentment regardless of which side won. Erin listened carefully as each family presented their case, feeling their emotions through the pack bonds. Beneath the anger and territorial pride, she sensed something else, Both families actually respected each other, had been friends before this dispute arose. The conflict was destroying a relationship they both valued but didn't know how to repair while saving face. "The hunting ground will be shared," Aaron declared, "but not by dividing it into separate territories. Instead, both families will hunt cooperatively, with kills distributed based on each family's contribution to the hunt. This recognizes both families' legitimate claims while creating incentive for cooperation rather than competition." Silence followed her pronouncement. Then slowly, the disputing families exchanged glances. Through the bonds, Aaron felt their surprise giving way to relief. They'd been handed an honorable solution that let them restore their friendship without admitting defeat. "Wise judgment," Vonda acknowledged. Second dispute. The second case was more complex. A young wolf accused of stealing from pack stores during the recent attacks. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Traditional pack law demanded harsh punishment for theft during crisis, when pack cohesion was most crucial. But Aaron felt through the bonds that the accused wolf was terrified, desperate, and innocent. Someone else had stolen and framed the youth to cover their own crimes. "The accused is innocent," Aaron said flatly. "The real thief is Sammy Lacey, who stands among the accusers hoping to deflect suspicion." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sammy's face went pale, then red with fury. "That's a baseless accusation. You have no proof." "I have what I need," Aaron interrupted. "Your emotions betray you through the pack bonds. Your guilt burns clearly enough for anyone with Royal Omega senses to perceive." "She's manipulating you," Sammy protested, "using supposed abilities to make false accusations." "Empty your pockets," Adrian commanded, his alpha authority brooking no argument. Sammy hesitated, then reluctantly pulled out several items that matched descriptions of stolen goods. The evidence was undeniable. As warriors escorted Sammy away for proper punishment, Aaron felt the pack's shock, transforming into awe. She hadn't just resolved the dispute, she'd revealed truth that conventional investigation had missed. "The candidate demonstrates wisdom beyond ordinary perception," Vonda said carefully. Third dispute. The final case struck closer to home, a challenge to Aaron's own authority. A senior pack member named Stuart Dyer stood and addressed the assembly. "With respect, I dispute whether an outsider can truly understand Silvercrest pack culture well enough to make wise decisions. She's been here less than 2 weeks. How can she grasp generations of tradition and relationship dynamics?" It was a fair question, one that cut to the heart of concerns many pack members still harbored. Aaron could feel their attention focusing with renewed intensity. "You're right," Aaron said simply. "I don't fully understand Silvercrest traditions yet. I haven't lived through the experiences that shaped this pack's culture. I'm an outsider trying to earn belonging." Murmurs of surprise at her admission. "But that's exactly why I might make a good Luna," Aaron continued. "Because I see this pack with fresh eyes. I notice patterns that longtime members accept without question. I feel connections through the bonds that reveal truths your familiarity might obscure." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Silvercrest pack has been weakening. Council members noticed it years ago but couldn't identify the cause. Warriors felt it during combat. Coordination that should have been instinctive requiring more conscious effort. Families experienced it as growing isolation, even while living in close proximity. "What's your point?" Stuart challenged. "My point is that your pack bonds have been deteriorating because you've been led by alphas who valued tradition over adaptation, who maintained authority through dominance rather than genuine connection, who saw pack members as resources to manage rather than individuals to nurture." Aaron's voice strengthened. "I may be an outsider, but I can feel what this pack needs. Not more rigid tradition, but leaders who actually strengthen the bonds that make you a pack, rather than just wolves sharing territory." The silence that followed carried weight. Through the bonds, Aaron felt something shifting. Pack members recognizing truth in her words, acknowledging patterns they'd sensed but never articulated. The candidate speaks wisdom earned through observation rather than just experience, Vonda declared. The wisdom trial is complete and passed. We proceed to the final trial, bond trial, at sunset. As the assembly dispersed, Adrian intercepted Erin before she could leave the hall. That was dangerously honest, he said quietly, essentially admitting you don't fully understand us yet. But it was true, and they needed to hear it. Erin met his gaze. I won't lie to earn their approval. If they accept me as Luna, it needs to be for what I actually am, not some performance of perfection. What you actually are, Adrian said, pulling her close, is extraordinary. And I'm starting to think this pack doesn't deserve you. They deserve a Luna who sees them clearly, who wants to strengthen what's good rather than just maintain what's traditional. Erin pressed against his chest, drawing comfort from his solid presence. One more trial. The bond trial. Adrian's expression grew concerned. That's the most difficult for Royal Omegas. You'll be expected to demonstrate pack bond manipulation on a scale that could exhaust you completely. What exactly does it involve? Creating temporary bond networks with every pack member simultaneously, strengthening their connections to each other and to you, sustaining it long enough to prove the bonds are real and stable. He paused. Traditional Lunas struggled with connecting to 50 or 60 pack members. You'll be expected to bond with over 300. Erin's stomach dropped. 300 simultaneous connections? If you can't manage it, the trial can be postponed until you've trained more. No! Erin shook her head firmly. We don't have time for postponement. Not with an organized enemy attacking multiple territories. I need Luna authority now, not months from now after more training. The strain could be dangerous. So is facing war without every advantage we can muster. Erin squeezed his hand. I can do this. I have to. Sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple as the entire pack assembled in the ceremonial grounds. 300 wolves formed concentric circles around the central platform where Erin stood, their collective presence pressing against her consciousness like physical weight. Vonda approached carrying an ornate chalice filled with water from the sacred spring that marked Silvercrest Territory's founding site. The bond trial begins, she announced. The candidate will drink from the sacred spring, then extend her awareness to every pack member present. She must create and sustain bond connections strong enough for each wolf to feel her presence in their consciousness. The bond network must remain stable for the duration of the full moon's rise, approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes didn't sound long, but maintaining 300 simultaneous connections while they actively tested the bond's strength would drain her reserves faster than anything she'd attempted before. Erin drank from the chalice. The water tasted of earth and stone and something indefinable that might have been magic. Power surged through her system, sharpening her awareness of every wolf present. She closed her eyes and reached out. The pack bonds were already there, threads of connection linking every member to each other and to their alpha. But they were weak, frayed, showing the deterioration she'd mentioned during the wisdom trial. Years of neglect had left them barely functional compared to what they should be. Erin touched the first bond gently, a connection to the wolf nearest her position, sent a pulse of energy through it, strengthening the thread until it gleamed with renewed vitality. Felt the wolf's surprise and wonder as the bond suddenly carried more sensation, more awareness, more sense of belonging than they'd experienced in years. Then she reached for the second bond, the third, the 10th. By the 50th connection, sweat beaded on Erin's forehead. By the 100th, her legs trembled with effort. By the 200th, she was gasping for breath as the strain of maintaining so many active connections pushed her abilities to their limit. Too much, her wolf warned. We can't sustain this many. But she had to prove she could do what traditional Lunas couldn't. Had to demonstrate that Royal Omega abilities weren't threats, but gifts that could save them all. Erin pushed past her exhaustion and touched every remaining bond, strengthening each thread until all 300 pack members were connected through her consciousness. The network blazed in her awareness like a living web of light, each thread pulsing with energy and emotion. Through the connections, she felt everything. Every wolf's thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams. Every relationship between pack members. Every conflict and friendship. Every secret longing and hidden pain. The sheer volume of information flooding her mind was overwhelming, threatening to shatter her concentration. "Hold," she commanded herself. "Just hold for 20 minutes." The full moon began its rise. Pack members tested the bonds, pushing against them with their consciousness to verify the connections were real. Each test sent feedback through Erin's awareness, demanding she reinforce the threads to prevent collapse. She held. Minutes stretched like hours. The strain built until Erin's vision blurred and her consciousness fractured into hundreds of pieces, each fragment maintaining a different connection. But she refused to let any thread fail, refused to allow the network to collapse. Through the mate bond, she felt Adrian's desperate concern, his desire to make her stop before permanent damage occurred. But she also felt his pride, his awe at what she was accomplishing. Almost there, he sent through their connection. 5 more minutes. Erin didn't think she had 5 more minutes. Her body was shutting down from the effort, her wolf whimpering with exhaustion. But she'd come too far to fail now. Then something unexpected happened. The pack members stopped testing the bonds and started feeding energy back through them. Small amounts from each wolf, but collectively significant, their strength flowing into her, supporting her efforts, helping sustain the network she'd created. They're helping, she realized with shock. They want this to succeed. With their support, the final 5 minutes became bearable. The bond network stabilized as pack members took partial responsibility for maintaining their connections, understanding instinctively that Luna bonds were supposed to be mutual support rather than one-sided domination. When the full moon finally cleared the horizon, signaling the trial's completion, Erin released the network carefully. Let each thread settle into its natural state, still strengthened from her efforts, but no longer requiring active maintenance. She collapsed to her knees, utterly spent. The assembled pack erupted in howls, not challenge or aggression, but acknowledgement, recognition, acceptance. Vonda approached with the silver circlet. The bond trial is complete and passed. By ancient law and witness trial, I declare Erin Boone worthy of Luna status. She placed the circlet on Erin's head. Rise, Luna of Silvercrest Pack. Rise and be recognized by those you will lead. Adrian was there instantly, helping her stand despite her trembling legs. Through their bond, she felt his overwhelming emotions, relief, pride, love, and fierce protectiveness. The pack bowed as one, acknowledging their new Luna. Erin had done it, passed all 3 trials as deemed, proven beyond any doubt that an Omega could be Luna, that Royal Omega abilities weren't threats but exactly what their pack needed. But as she stood there, circlet on her head and mate at her side, a disturbing sensation crept through her awareness. Something was wrong with the pack bonds she'd just strengthened. A dark presence was trying to infiltrate the network, corruption magic seeking entry through the connections she'd opened, and it was coming from inside the territory. "Adrian," she whispered urgently, "we have a bigger problem than Carol. Someone else is trying to corrupt the pack bonds right now." His expression shifted immediately to combat alertness. "Where?" Erin followed the corruption source through her enhanced awareness. It led toward the compound's eastern section, toward buildings that housed the prisoners, she breathed in horror. "Someone's accessing Carol's corruption magic from the cells where we're holding him." They ran. Warriors followed as Adrian and Erin raced toward the detention area, their alarms spreading through the pack bonds. By the time they reached the cells, a crowd had gathered. The door to Carol's cell stood open. Inside, the council member lay dead, his throat torn out. And kneeling beside his body, hands glowing with active corruption magic, was the last person Erin expected. Gerardo Michael, the observer who'd witnessed her first battle, who'd reported her abilities to Carol, who everyone assumed was just a low-ranking messenger for House Townsend. But the power flowing through him suggested something far more dangerous than a simple spy. "You!" Adrian snarled. "You've been the master all along." Gerardo looked up with a smile that held nothing human. "Not the master, just his vessel, his voice in your territories while he prepared the true assault." His eyes glowed with unnatural light. "And now that your Omega has so helpfully strengthened all the pack bonds, he can corrupt them all simultaneously." Horror flooded through Erin as she understood. By creating a strong network connecting every pack member, she'd inadvertently built the perfect conduit for corruption magic to spread. She'd just given their enemy exactly what he needed to destroy them all. "Stop him!" Adrian commanded. But Gerardo was already channeling massive amounts of power through Carol's leftover magical implements. The corruption surged outward, reaching for the strengthened bonds, trying to infiltrate every connection Erin had just created. Across the territory, pack members began collapsing as hostile magic invaded their consciousness. Screams echoed through the compound as hundreds of wolves felt corruption burning through their minds. Erin did the only thing she could think of. She opened herself to the corruption again, trying to draw it away from vulnerable pack members, just as she had with Carol's magic. But this was stronger, so much stronger. The entity using Gerardo as a vessel possessed power that dwarfed anything she'd encountered before. "I can't stop it," she realized in despair. "It's too strong." The corruption flooded into her consciousness with overwhelming force. Pain exploded through every nerve as hostile magic tried to take control, to turn her into a puppet, just as it had turned the rogues. Through the agony, she felt Adrian trying to help, felt the mate bond channeling his strength into her system, felt other wolves adding their energy too, pack members she'd just bonded with, trying desperately to save their new Luna. But it wasn't enough. The corruption was consuming her, drowning her consciousness in darkness that promised to swallow everything she was. "This is it," Erin thought distantly. "I passed the trials only to die protecting them from my own mistake." Then, from somewhere deep inside her core, something ancient awakened. Power that predated pack bonds, older than the territories themselves, rose up to meet the corruption. Royal Omega abilities in their purest form, not just strengthening or purifying bonds, but commanding them with absolute authority. No, the power declared through Erin's consciousness. "These bonds are mine. You have no claim here." The corruption magic recoiled, unable to withstand authority that resonated with fundamental laws of pack dynamics. Erin seized control of her enhanced abilities and did something she'd never attempted. She didn't just purify the corruption, she destroyed it, burned it out of existence with power that recognized hostile magic as antithetical to pack bonds' true nature. The corruption shattered, its fragments dissolving into nothing as Royal Omega abilities operated at full strength for the first time in centuries. Gerardo screamed as the backlash hit him. The entity controlling him was severed violently from its vessel, retreating to whatever distant location it truly occupied. "This isn't over," Gerardo gasped, blood trickling from his nose and ears. "The Master will return. We'll finish what the purge started. We'll eliminate every Royal Omega until—" He collapsed, unconscious from magical backlash. Silence fell across the detention area. Erin stood at the center of devastation, her power still blazing through the pack bonds, purifying every last trace of corruption from their network. She'd done it, saved them all, proven that Royal Omega abilities weren't just defensive. They were the ultimate counter to the exact type of magic that threatened pack cohesion. But she'd also learned something terrifying. Somewhere out there, an enemy powerful enough to corrupt entire territories, patient enough to orchestrate complex plots spanning decades, and determined enough to continue the genocide that supposedly ended centuries ago, was still active, and now they knew she existed. Knew she possessed abilities that could counter their corruption, knew she represented the greatest threat to whatever plans they'd been carefully building. War had been declared, not by her, but against her and everything Royal Omega bloodline represented. As Erin finally released her hold on the pack bonds and collapsed into Adrian's arms, she knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. The real battle was still coming. Chapter 10. The Omega Queen. 3 days after defeating Gerardo's corruption magic, Erin stood on the balcony of the Alpha's residence and watched her pack preparing for war. Her pack. The designation still felt surreal, but the silver circlet resting on her dresser inside confirmed its truth. She was Luna now, officially recognized after passing all 3 trials and proving her abilities could protect rather than threaten pack cohesion. Warriors trained in the courtyard below, their movements more coordinated than before. The strengthened pack bonds she'd created during the bond trial had enhanced their ability to fight as a unified force, anticipating each other's actions through connections that now functioned as they were meant to. "You're brooding," Adrian said, emerging from their quarters to wrap his arms around her from behind. The mate bond hummed with comfortable warmth between them, still new enough to feel miraculous, but growing more natural with each passing day. "I'm strategizing," Erin corrected, leaning back against his solid chest. "There's a difference. Both involve excessive thinking and worried expressions." He pressed a kiss to her marked neck, the gesture sending pleasant warmth through her system. "We're as prepared as we can be. The territory defenses are stronger than they've been in decades. Pack bonds are functioning better than anyone alive remembers. And we have you, a Luna who can literally burn corruption magic out of existence. We also have an enemy we can't identify who's powerful enough to corrupt entire territories, patient enough to orchestrate genocide across centuries, and determined enough to continue trying despite repeated failures." Erin turned in his arms to face him. "Gerardo hasn't woken up yet. We have no leads on who the master actually is or where they're operating from. Eric is following every thread from Gerardo's belongings. Stanley has scouts monitoring all neighboring territories for unusual activity. Nate is coordinating intelligence gathering with allied packs." Adrian's hands settled on her waist. "We're doing everything possible to identify the threat before it manifests again. And if that's not enough, then we adapt and overcome, just like we have with every other crisis." His expression grew serious. "Erin, I know you're worried. I know the weight of Luna responsibility is heavier than you expected. But you're not facing this alone. We're in this together, all of us." A knock interrupted before Erin could respond. Nate entered the balcony area, his expression carrying urgency that immediately put both of them on alert. "Your Majesty Luna," he said formally, though his eyes held warmth when he addressed Erin. "We have visitors. The Northern Coalition Alphas have returned, without warriors this time. They're requesting diplomatic audience." Adrian tensed. "After their attempted intimidation failed, they want to talk?" "Apparently. They claim to have information about the corruption attacks and want to discuss alliance." "It could be a trap," Erin said immediately. "Could be," Nate agreed, "but they're offering to meet in neutral territory with minimal guards, and given the coordinated attacks that hit their packs while they were here last time, they seem genuinely shaken." Adrian exchanged glances with Erin. Through their bond, she felt his calculation, weighing risks against potential benefits of learning what the coalition had discovered. "We meet them," he decided, "but with full security protocols. If this is a trap, they'll regret it." The neutral territory chosen for the meeting was a clearing marking the boundary between 3 packlands: Silvercrest, Ironwood, and Clearwater. Ancient stones marked the space as sacred ground where violence was forbidden by laws older than any current pack. Adrian arrived with Erin at his side, flanked by Stanley, Nate, and a dozen elite warriors positioned at strategic points around the clearing. The Luna circlet rested on Erin's head, a visible declaration of her official status. The Coalition Alphas were already waiting. Jacob Andrews stood at their center, looking haggard in a way he hadn't during their previous confrontation. 4 other Alphas flanked him, leaders of territories that had participated in the attempted intimidation, but their posture had changed dramatically. Where before they'd projected confidence and superiority, now they showed something approaching desperation. "Alpha King Adrian," Jacob began formally, "Luna Aaron, thank you for agreeing to meet." "You have 5 minutes to explain why we shouldn't consider your presence a threat," Adrian replied coldly. "Start with why we should trust anything you say after you brought armed forces to our borders." "Because we were wrong," Jacob said bluntly. "About the threat Royal Omega bloodline represents, about appropriate responses to her existence, about nearly everything." He gestured to his fellow Alphas. "The coordinated attacks that hit our territories while we were here killed 37 pack members, corrupted 50 more who we had to restrain before they could harm others, and revealed that our security had been compromised for months, possibly years, by an enemy we didn't know existed." "The Master," Aaron said quietly. "We don't know what to call it, but yes, some entity with power to corrupt wolves across multiple territories simultaneously, and it specifically targeted territories participating in the coalition against you." Jacob's expression turned grim. "We thought we were acting to prevent instability. Instead, we were being manipulated into weakening ourselves." "How?" Adrian demanded. Another Alpha, a woman named Katina Shelton from Clearwater Pack, stepped forward. "We found evidence in our territory, documents hidden in our archives placed there decades ago, describing Royal Omega bloodline as existential threat, instructions for what to do if one ever surfaced, all of it designed to make us react with hostility rather than assessment." "Planted evidence," Stanley murmured, "shaping your response in advance." "Exactly. Someone has been preparing for Royal Omega resurgence for generations, building narratives that would make us eliminate the threat for them." Katina's gaze fixed on Aaron. "You weren't the danger. You were the solution to a problem we didn't understand we had." "Corruption magic," Aaron said, pieces falling into place. "Royal Omega abilities counter it naturally, purify pack bonds that have been corrupted. That's why the entity wanted my bloodline eliminated. We're the only defense against their primary weapon." "That's our conclusion as well," Jacob agreed. "And it means we made a catastrophic error attacking you instead of recognizing you as potential ally." "So now you want alliance," Adrian said, his tone skeptical. "Convenient timing." "We want survival," Jacob corrected. "Our territories are vulnerable to corruption we can't effectively fight. Your Luna demonstrated abilities that can cleanse that corruption. If we continue as enemies, this entity will destroy us one territory at a time. But if we work together—" "You're asking a lot," Aaron said quietly. "You came to our borders threatening genocide. Now you want us to risk our Luna protecting territories that wanted her dead." "Yes," Jacob said simply. "Because you're right, it's asking a lot. But it's also our only chance, and perhaps your only chance to identify the entity before it adapts to counter your abilities." The admission hung in the air. Through the pack bonds, Aaron felt Adrian's conflicted emotions. The pragmatic Alpha King recognized the strategic value of alliance, but the protective mate wanted to refuse any arrangement that put her in danger. "What intelligence do you have?" Aaron asked. "About the entity's identity or location?" Katina produced several documents. The planted evidence all originated from the same source, a noble family that was supposedly eliminated during the original purge, House Nightshade. According to records, they were Royal Omega bloodline themselves, but they'd been experimenting with corruption magic to enhance their abilities. When the purge came, everyone assumed they died with the other Royal Omegas. But they didn't, Stanley said, studying the documents. "They went into hiding. And they've been orchestrating everything since," Jacob continued. "The purge that eliminated their rivals, the systems that kept surviving Royal Omegas weak and hidden, the corruption networks that gave them power over pack bonds, all of it designed to make them the only bloodline with access to both Royal Omega abilities and corruption magic." Horror crept through Aaron's consciousness. "They're Royal Omegas who've been corrupted. That's why the magic is so powerful. They understand pack bonds from the inside, know exactly how to twist and manipulate them. And they'll know your capabilities better than any normal enemy would, Adrian added, his voice tight. Because you share the same fundamental abilities. They'll anticipate your counters, exploit your weaknesses, attack in ways specifically designed to overwhelm Royal Omega defenses. Which is why we need numbers, Jacob pressed. Multiple territories working together, shared intelligence networks, combined defensive efforts. If House Nightshade attacks you alone, you might fall regardless of your abilities. But if we stand together, we have a chance, Erin finished. She looked at Adrian. He's right. We can't face a corrupted Royal Omega bloodline alone. You're actually considering alliance with wolves who wanted you dead 3 days ago? I'm considering survival, for our pack and theirs. Erin studied the Coalition Alphas. But alliance requires trust. How do we know this isn't another manipulation? That you're not working with House Nightshade? You don't, Jacob admitted. But you can verify our sincerity through the pack bonds you strengthened. Connect with our territories. Feel whether corruption magic is active in our networks. If we're compromised, you'll sense it immediately. It was risky. Extending her awareness to foreign pack bonds could expose her to corruption magic if the Coalition territories were already infiltrated. But it would also reveal truth that no amount of words could provide. Erin closed her eyes and reached out. Her awareness touched Ironwood Pack first, Jacob's territory. The bonds were weak and frayed, showing years of deterioration similar to what Silvercrest had experienced. But beneath the weakness, she sensed genuine fear, desperation, and determination to protect pack members from threats they didn't fully understand. No corruption, just wolves struggling against enemy they weren't equipped to fight. She touched the other territories one by one. Clearwater, Shadowpine, Northridge, Duskfall. All showed similar patterns, weakened bonds, frightened pack members, and complete absence of active corruption magic. They were telling the truth. They're clean, Erin reported, opening her eyes. No corruption in their bond networks. Whatever House Nightshade's plans are, the Coalition isn't currently part of them. Relief flooded the Alphas' expressions. Then you'll consider alliance? Katina asked hopefully. On conditions, Adrian said firmly. First, formal apology to my Luna for the threats and intimidation. Second, signed treaties establishing mutual defense obligations. Third, intelligence sharing about House Nightshade and any historical information your territories possess. Fourth, acknowledgement of Luna Erin's authority to intervene in any territory facing corruption magic attacks without requiring permission in advance. The last condition essentially gives her authority across all our territories, one of the other Alphas protested. Yes, Adrian said flatly, because she's the only wolf alive who can effectively counter corruption magic. If you want her protection, you accept her authority to provide it without bureaucratic delays that could cost lives. The Coalition Alphas exchanged glances. Finally, Jacob nodded. Agreed. All conditions are acceptable. Then we have alliance, Adrian declared. Temporary, until House Nightshade is eliminated. After that, we renegotiate based on how well this arrangement actually functions. As formal treaties were drafted and signed, Erin felt the weight of responsibility settling more heavily on her shoulders. She was no longer just Luna of Silvercrest. She was effectively protector for 6 territories, responsible for defending thousands of wolves against an enemy that understood her abilities as well as she did. What have I gotten myself into? Through the mate bond, Adrian sent waves of support and confidence. Nothing you can't handle, nothing we can't handle together. The War Council convened that evening in Silvercrest's Great Hall, now expanded to accommodate representatives from all allied territories. Maps covered the central table, showing territory boundaries, reported corruption sightings, and suspected locations where House Nightshade might be operating. Eric had compiled centuries of intelligence into comprehensive briefings that painted a disturbing picture. House Nightshade's last known location was in the Deadlands, Eric explained, pointing to a region marked in red on the map. The territory was declared uninhabitable after magical contamination during the Purge. No pack has claimed it in 300 years. Because it's been House Nightshade's stronghold the entire time, Stanley concluded. Hidden in plain sight, in territory everyone avoids. If we want to end this threat permanently, we need to assault their stronghold, Nate added. Eliminate their leadership and destroy their corruption magic infrastructure. That's suicide, Jacob protested. The Deadlands got their name for a reason. Wolves who venture too deep don't come back. Because House Nightshade kills them, Aaron said quietly, maintains the Deadlands' reputation to keep everyone away. But if we go in with sufficient force, we still face corrupted Royal Omegas on their home territory, using magic we don't fully understand, with every tactical advantage they've spent centuries preparing. Adrian's expression was grim. This isn't a battle. It's a potential massacre. Then what do you suggest? Katina asked. We wait for them to attack us again? Watch them corrupt more pack members while we hide behind defensive positions? I suggest we don't throw lives away on desperate assaults, Adrian replied. We gather intelligence first, identify their exact location, their defenses, their numbers. Then we plan a strategic assault that maximizes our advantages while minimizing casualties. That could take months, another Alpha argued. How many more attacks do we endure while planning? As many as necessary to ensure our assault actually succeeds, Adrian said coldly. Patience isn't cowardice, it's tactical wisdom. Arguments erupted around the table as Alphas debated aggression versus caution, immediate action versus careful planning. Through the pack bonds, Aaron felt their fear driving the discussion. Terror of corruption magic they couldn't fight, desperation to eliminate the threat quickly, and beneath it all, hope that Royal Omega abilities might somehow provide simple solutions to complex problems. But there were no simple solutions. House Nightshade had survived and thrived for 3 centuries through careful planning and patience. Defeating them would require matching their strategic thinking rather than relying on desperate heroics. We need information, Aaron said, her voice cutting through the arguments, about House Nightshade's current strength, their defenses, their corruption magic capabilities. We need to know exactly what we're facing before we commit to assault. And how do we get that information? Jacob challenged. Scout parties that venture into the Deadlands disappear. Then we don't send normal scouts. Aaron looked at Adrian. We send someone House Nightshade will want to capture rather than kill. Someone whose abilities they need to study and potentially corrupt to their cause. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately, recognizing her implication. You are not using yourself as bait. It's the only way to get inside their defenses. It's suicide. If they capture you, they'll corrupt you or kill you. Either outcome is unacceptable. If we attack blindly, hundreds of warriors die in failed assault, Aaron countered. That outcome is also unacceptable. Then we find another option. There is no other option. Aaron stood, facing him across the table. I'm the only Royal Omega they know about, the only wolf they need to study to understand how to counter my abilities. If I present myself as vulnerable target, they'll try to capture me rather than kill me outright. That gives us opportunity to infiltrate their stronghold, gather intelligence, and identify weaknesses. And what happens when they succeed in corrupting you? Adrian demanded. When they turn the most powerful wolf in the territories into their weapon? They won't succeed. Aaron's voice carried absolute certainty. Because I understand pack bonds better than they do. They've been isolated for centuries, working with corruption magic that twists connections. But I've been strengthening bonds, purifying corruption, building networks they can't replicate. My abilities come from genuine connection, not magical manipulation. That makes me stronger than they anticipate. You can't know that for certain. No, Aaron admitted. But I know that waiting for them to attack us again gives them initiative, lets them choose when and where battles occur. If we want to win this war, we need to force them into reactive position instead. Silence fell across the War Council. Every Alpha present recognized the strategic wisdom in her argument while simultaneously understanding the enormous risk. "There has to be another way," Adrian said, but his voice had lost its earlier certainty. "If you think of one, I'm listening." Aaron moved around the table to stand before him. "But until then, this is our best option. I go into the Deadlands, let House Nightshade detect my presence, allow them to attempt capture. While they're focused on me, our forces position for assault. When we have intelligence about their defenses and numbers, we attack with full force while I create chaos from inside their stronghold. You're describing a suicide mission. I'm describing a calculated risk." Aaron took his hands. "Adrian, I didn't become Luna to hide behind walls while others face danger. I became Luna to protect our pack using every ability I possess. This is how I protect them, by taking risks no one else can take, by using capabilities no one else has." Through their mate bond, she felt his internal war. The Alpha King understood military necessity, but the mate couldn't bear the thought of sending his partner into such danger. "Give me 1 day," Adrian finally said. "1 day to find an alternative plan. If we can't develop a better strategy by tomorrow evening, we'll proceed with your infiltration approach." It was compromise, but also acknowledgement that he might not find a better option. Aaron nodded agreement. As the council dispersed with assignments to develop contingency plans, Aaron remained with Adrian in the now empty Great Hall. "You know I'm right," she said quietly. "I know you're probably right," Adrian corrected, "but knowing something intellectually doesn't make it easier to accept emotionally." He pulled her close. "You're asking me to deliberately send my mate into enemy territory, to let them attempt to capture and corrupt you, to stand by while you face danger I can't protect you from. Every instinct I have rebels against that plan." "I know. But your instincts also recognize that protecting me by keeping me safe accomplishes nothing if House Nightshade destroys everything we're trying to build." Aaron pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. This is what Royal Omega Bloodline was meant for, standing between pack members and corruption that would destroy them. I can't fulfill that purpose from behind defensive walls. What if I lose you? You won't. Because I have something House Nightshade doesn't, genuine connections to pack members who will fight heaven and hell to get me back. She looked up at him. "I'm not facing this alone. I'll have the mate bond connecting us, the pack bonds linking me to our territory, and the certainty that if I call for help, you'll tear the Deadlands apart to reach me." Adrian's arms tightened around her. "I will. If they hurt you, if they try to corrupt you, I'll show them why attacking my mate was the last mistake they'll ever make. I'm counting on it." Aaron stood on her toes to kiss him, pouring reassurance through their bond. "1 day to find alternatives, then we end this threat permanently." 24 hours later, no better plan had materialized. Aaron stood at the edge of the Deadlands as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and red. Before her stretched territory that had been abandoned for 3 centuries, twisted trees that grew in unnatural formations, earth that bore scars from magical contamination, and air that carried the faint scent of corruption. Behind her, Adrian and their combined forces waited just beyond the Deadlands' borders. 6 territories had contributed warriors, creating an assault force of over 200 elite fighters. They would remain hidden until Aaron's signal, either her call for help or confirmation that she'd identified House Nightshade's stronghold location and defenses. "Last chance to reconsider," Adrian said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "I'm going." Aaron adjusted the small communication crystal Eric had provided, a magical device that would allow her to send brief messages through the pack bonds. 3 days maximum. If you haven't heard from me by then, assume capture and assault their stronghold, regardless of intelligence gathered. 3 days. Adrian pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I love you. Come back to me." "I love you too, and I will." Aaron kissed him one last time, then stepped away before her resolve could weaken. "See you soon." She shifted to wolf form and ran into the Deadlands alone. The territory felt wrong immediately. The pack bonds she'd grown accustomed to sensing, the constant awareness of nearby wolves, the comfortable presence of pack connections, vanished as she crossed into corrupted land. It was like going deaf and blind simultaneously, her supernatural senses suddenly unable to perceive the networks that normally provided constant information. But that also meant House Nightshade couldn't sense her approach through normal bond networks. She was invisible to their usual detection methods, which gave her temporary advantage. Erin ran deeper into the Deadlands, following instinct more than conscious navigation. The corruption grew stronger as she traveled, the air itself seeming to press against her consciousness with hostile intent. Then she felt it. A presence ahead, watching with intelligence that suggested more than simple corruption magic. Royal Omega abilities, but twisted and wrong, operating through principles that violated everything pack bonds were meant to represent. House Nightshade had detected her. Erin continued forward, making no attempt to hide her presence. She was bait, after all. The entire plan depended on them trying to capture her rather than kill her outright. Corrupted wolves materialized from the shadows, dozens of them, moving with coordination that spoke of direct control rather than instinctive pack behavior. They surrounded her, cutting off escape routes, but made no aggressive moves. A figure stepped forward from the largest group. Even in wolf form, Erin recognized Royal Omega presence, corrupted and twisted, but undeniably her own bloodline. The wolf shifted to human form, revealing a woman who appeared middle-aged, but whose eyes carried centuries of accumulated knowledge and madness. Her skin bore markings that pulsed with corruption magic, and her smile held nothing human. "Welcome, cousin," the woman said. "I am Raina Nightshade, last true heir of Royal Omega bloodline, and you are going to help me finish what the Purge failed to accomplish." Erin shifted to human form as well, keeping her posture non-threatening despite every instinct screaming to fight or flee. Which is what, exactly? Eliminating the weakness that made Royal Omegas vulnerable in the first place. Raina circled her slowly, studying her with unnerving intensity. Our ancestors believed pack bonds were sacred, that strengthening connections between wolves was our highest calling. But bonds are chains. They make us vulnerable to manipulation, to exploitation, to destruction by those who understand how to corrupt them. So you chose to become the corruption instead. I chose power over sentiment, control over connection. Survival over the naive belief that pack bonds would protect us. Raina's smile widened. The Purge taught me a valuable lesson. Wolves who depend on others for strength will always be at the mercy of those who require no one. So I transformed Royal Omega abilities into weapons that didn't need pack bonds to function, created corruption magic that could control without connection, dominate without vulnerability. You're describing slavery, not leadership. I'm describing reality. The strong rule the weak. Always have, always will. Your precious pack bonds are illusions that make wolves feel connected, while actually making them dependent. Raina stopped directly in front of Erin. But you're different. I can sense it. Your abilities are stronger than they should be, more developed than any Royal Omega I've encountered in centuries. How? I use them the way they were meant to be used, Erin replied, to strengthen genuine connections, not fake them through corruption. Interesting. Raina's hand shot out, grabbing Erin's wrist before she could react. Corruption magic surged through the contact, attempting to infiltrate her consciousness. Let's see if your genuine connections protect you from direct assault. Pain exploded through Erin's mind as hostile magic tried to overwhelm her defenses. But she'd faced corruption magic before, had learned through desperate necessity how to resist its influence. She pushed back with her own Royal Omega abilities, purifying the corruption even as it tried to take hold. For a moment, the two forces locked in stalemate. Raina's corruption attempting to dominate, Erin's purification burning away hostile magic as fast as it could manifest. Then Raina released her grip, stepping back with expression that mingled surprise and calculation. Remarkable. You're actually resisting direct corruption from royal Omega bloodline." She studied Aaron with renewed interest. "This changes my plans significantly. I was going to simply corrupt you, turn you into another weapon in my arsenal. But if you can resist my magic, that means you possess knowledge I need. Knowledge about how to perfect corruption techniques to overcome royal Omega defenses. I'll never help you." "Oh, you will, eventually." Reyna gestured to the corrupted wolves surrounding them. "Take her to the stronghold, maximum security. And prepare the ritual chamber. We're going to discover exactly what makes this one so special." The corrupted wolves closed in. Aaron considered fighting, but there were too many, and she needed to see House Nightshade's stronghold to gather intelligence for the assault. So she allowed them to force her deeper into the Deadlands, toward whatever nightmare Reyna had constructed over centuries of isolation and madness. But as they traveled, Aaron focused on the small communication crystal hidden in her fur, sent a brief pulse of energy through the pack bonds, carrying a single message back to Adrian and their waiting forces. "Captured. Stronghold located. Prepare assault. I'll create opening from inside." Through the mate bond, despite the distance and corruption trying to block their connection, she felt Adrian's response, fury and fear mixed with grim determination. He was coming for her. They all were. She just needed to survive long enough for the rescue to arrive, and hopefully prevent Reyna from discovering that the remarkable resistance she'd displayed wasn't actually Aaron's maximum capability. Because Aaron had been holding back, concealing the full extent of her abilities while gathering information about Reyna's corruption techniques. House Nightshade thought they'd captured a prize to study and potentially break. They'd actually brought in a weapon designed specifically to destroy them. The real battle was about to begin. Epilogue. The New Dawn. The stronghold of House Nightshade was everything Aaron had feared and worse. Carved into the heart of the Deadlands, the structure pulsed with corruption magic that had been accumulating for 3 centuries. Walls bore symbols that twisted her perception when she looked at them directly. The air itself felt thick with malevolent energy that pressed against her consciousness with suffocating weight. Corrupted wolves escorted her through corridors lit by crystals that glowed with unnatural light, their hands rough as they forced her into a chamber at the stronghold's center. The ritual room was circular, its floor marked with intricate patterns that channeled corruption magic through pathways Aaron could sense but didn't fully understand. Reyna stood at the chamber's center, surrounded by 4 other wolves whose presence carried the unmistakable signature of corrupted royal Omega bloodline. House Nightshade hadn't been eliminated during the purge. They'd multiplied, created new generations raised in isolation, and taught that corruption was strength rather than perversion of their true abilities. "Secure her to the altar," Reyna commanded. The corrupted wolves forced Aaron onto a stone platform, magical bindings manifesting to hold her in place. She didn't resist, not yet. She needed to see what Reyna planned, needed to understand the full extent of House Nightshade's capabilities before acting. Through the communication crystal hidden in her clothing, she sent steady pulses of information back to Adrian. The stronghold's layout, the number of corrupted wolves, the ritual chamber's location, and most importantly, the massive corruption infrastructure that powered everything, a network of crystals and magical conduits that would need to be destroyed to eliminate the threat permanently. "You're wondering why I'm not simply killing you," Reyna observed, circling the altar. "A royal Omega who can resist my corruption magic would seem to be too dangerous to keep alive." "The thought crossed my mind," Aaron managed, despite the magical bindings pressing against her consciousness. "But you're more valuable alive, because you possess something I've spent centuries trying to develop, the ability to purify corruption magic while maintaining royal Omega power. That shouldn't be possible. Corruption and purification are opposite forces, yet somehow you've merged them." Reyna's expression turned hungry. "I need to understand how. Need to replicate your abilities so House Nightshade can operate without the weaknesses corruption magic creates." "Weaknesses?" Aaron asked, stalling for time while sensing Adrian and the assault force moving into position outside the stronghold. Corruption magic is powerful, yes, but it requires constant maintenance, constant energy expenditure to sustain. Pure Royal Omega abilities draw power from pack bonds naturally, requiring minimal effort. If I could purify my corruption while maintaining its control capabilities, Reyna smiled. I'd become unstoppable, the perfect fusion of Royal Omega connection and absolute domination. That's not how it works, Aaron said quietly. You can't have both. Purification requires genuine connection, real bonds built on trust and mutual support. Corruption is antithetical to that. It's built on control and exploitation. They're fundamentally incompatible. Everything is compatible with sufficient understanding. Reyna placed her hands on the altar, corruption magic surging through the ritual patterns. Let's begin the extraction. I'll tear your abilities apart piece by piece until I understand every secret of your power. Pain exploded through Aaron's consciousness as Reyna's magic invaded her mind with brutal force. This wasn't the attempted corruption from earlier. This was systematic dismantling of her mental defenses, magical examination of her abilities that felt like being dissected while conscious. But Aaron had been preparing for this. She'd spent the entire journey to the stronghold studying how Reyna's corruption magic operated, understanding its patterns and weaknesses, and she'd discovered something crucial. Corruption magic required the user to open themselves to hostile energy, to channel power that fundamentally damaged the wielder, even as it damaged others. Reyna thought she was examining Aaron's abilities. In reality, she was opening herself to examination. Aaron struck. Her Royal Omega abilities surged outward, not trying to resist Reyna's invasion, but instead flowing through the connection between them. She touched Reyna's consciousness directly, feeling the centuries of isolation and madness, the self-inflicted damage from constant corruption magic use, the desperate loneliness beneath the claims of strength through independence, and she began to purify. Reyna screamed, trying to sever the connection, but it was too late. Aaron's power burned through her corrupted system like wildfire, not destroying her consciousness but cleansing the corruption that had twisted it beyond recognition. "No!" Reyna thrashed, magical backlash destroying the ritual patterns and shattering the bindings holding Aaron. "You can't! This isn't possible!" "It's exactly what Royal Omega abilities were meant to do," Aaron gasped, maintaining the purification despite her own exhaustion. Not control, not domination, healing, restoration, bringing corrupted souls back to their true nature. The other corrupted Royal Omegas in the chamber rushed forward, trying to save their leader, but Aaron extended her awareness to include them as well, her abilities operating at full strength for the first time. She touched their consciousnesses one by one, burning away corruption that had been inflicted on them since birth, showed them what pack bonds were supposed to feel like, genuine connection rather than exploitative control, mutual support rather than parasitic dependence. One by one they stopped fighting, collapsed to the ground as their corrupted worldview shattered, replaced by understanding of how much they'd lost by choosing isolation over connection. Through the communication crystal, Aaron sent a final message. Now, strike now. The stronghold's walls exploded inward. Adrian led the assault personally, his massive wolf form tearing through corrupted defenses like they were paper. Behind him came warriors from 6 territories, their enhanced coordination, courtesy of Aaron's strengthened pack bonds, allowing them to fight as a unified force rather than separate groups. Corrupted wolves tried to mount defense, but their numbers were insufficient against the combined assault, and more importantly, their coordination collapsed as Aaron's purification spread through the stronghold, burning away corruption magic that had sustained their control networks. Adrian reached the ritual chamber within minutes, shifting to human form as his eyes found Aaron standing over Reyna's collapsed body. "You're alive," he breathed, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "I'm fine, better than fine." Aaron gestured to the purified Royal Omegas surrounding them. "They're not enemies anymore. Reyna either. I cleansed the corruption. They're just confused, damaged, but they can be helped." "And the stronghold?" The corruption infrastructure needs to be destroyed. The crystals, the ritual chambers, everything House Nightshade built over 3 centuries. It's too dangerous to leave intact. Stanley and Nate entered the chamber, taking in the scene with expressions of shocked relief. "The stronghold is secured, Your Majesty," Stanley reported. "Minimal casualties on our side. Most of the corrupted wolves surrendered once their control networks collapsed." "Begin evacuation," Adrian commanded. "Get everyone out, then destroy this place completely. I want nothing left that could be used to recreate corruption magic." As warriors began the systematic dismantling of House Nightshade's legacy, Aaron knelt beside Reyna. The woman who'd terrorized territories for centuries now looked small and broken, her eyes carrying awareness of how much she'd sacrificed in pursuit of power through corruption. "Why?" Reyna whispered. "Why save me? Why not just let me die with my madness intact?" "Because your Royal Omega bloodline," Aaron said gently. "Your family, however distant, and family deserves chance at redemption, even after terrible mistakes. I've committed genocide, corrupted thousands, orchestrated murders across centuries." Reyna's voice cracked. "There's no redemption from that. Maybe not complete redemption, but perhaps understanding, growth, using whatever time you have left to help repair the damage you caused." Aaron extended her hand. "I can't erase your crimes, but I can offer you choice. Die here as the monster you made yourself into, or live and try to become something better." Reyna stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out and grasped it. 2 months later. The ceremony took place in neutral territory, with representatives from all allied pacts gathered to witness the formal conclusion of the corruption crisis. Aaron stood at the center of the assembly, Luna Circlet gleaming in the afternoon sun, with Adrian beside her and their combined pack forces arranged in precise formation. Across from them stood the Coalition Alphas, their expressions showing respect that had been hard-earned through months of cooperation. "The threat of House Nightshade has been eliminated," Vonda declared, her aged voice carrying clearly. "The corruption networks that terrorized our territories for centuries have been dismantled, and pack bonds across all allied territories have been strengthened beyond anything our history records." She turned to Aaron. "Luna Aaron of Silvercrest, your actions have saved thousands of lives and prevented catastrophe that would have destroyed multiple packs. On behalf of the Northern Coalition, I present you with the title of High Luna, recognized authority across all allied territories for matters involving pack bond health and corruption threats. The title was unprecedented. A Luna whose authority extended beyond her home territory, whose abilities were acknowledged as crucial for regional security rather than confined to single pack operations." Aaron accepted the ceremonial items that came with the title: a crystal that would allow her to monitor pack bonds across all allied territories, and a formal treaty recognizing her right to intervene anywhere corruption magic threatened pack cohesion. "I accept this responsibility," she said clearly. "But I want everyone to understand. Royal Omega abilities aren't about control or dominance. They're about connection and healing. I'll use this authority to strengthen bonds between packs, not to impose my will on others." "We understand," Jacob said, stepping forward. "And we're grateful. Our territories are stronger together than we ever were divided." As the ceremony concluded and pack members began celebrating, Adrian pulled Aaron aside to a quiet area away from the crowds. "Hi, Luna," he said with slight smile. "That's quite a promotion from anonymous Omega gathering herbs in neutral territory." "Don't remind me. I still have nightmares about that first rogue attack." Aaron leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Sometimes I can't believe everything that's happened in less than 4 months. You've changed the entire political structure of the Northern Territories, united packs that have been enemies for generations, eliminated a threat that survived for 3 centuries, and you're surprised things feel surreal?" "When you list it like that," Aaron laughed softly, "I suppose I have been busy. And you're not done yet." Adrian's hand settled on her stomach, where new life had just begun growing, a development Diane had confirmed only yesterday. Soon you'll add Mother to your list of impossible accomplishments. Joy flooded through Aaron at the reminder. A child, the first offspring of an Alpha King and Royal Omega Luna in recorded history. No one knew exactly what abilities their daughter, Diane was certain it would be a girl, might possess, but everyone agreed she would be extraordinary. "Are you scared?" Aaron asked quietly. "Terrified," Adrian admitted, but also excited, hopeful, certain that whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. He pulled her closer, just like we've faced everything else. Through their mate bond, Aaron felt his absolute confidence, his unwavering support, and beneath it all, the love that had grown from desperate circumstances into something that felt as permanent as the pack bonds themselves. Movement caught her attention. Raina approached slowly, her posture tentative. The former leader of House Nightshade had spent the past 2 months in supervised rehabilitation, learning to use Royal Omega abilities properly while atoning for centuries of crimes. The process would take years, possibly decades, but she'd made genuine progress. "I don't mean to interrupt," Raina said quietly, "but I wanted to thank you for giving me chance at redemption I didn't deserve." "Everyone deserves a chance to change," Aaron replied. "Even those who've done terrible things. The question is whether they choose to take that chance." "I'm trying, every day." Raina's expression turned serious. "And I wanted to warn you. Being High Luna will make you target for every wolf who fears change. There are still families who benefited from the old power structures, who see your influence as threat to their authority. They'll try to undermine you, perhaps even eliminate you. Let them try," Adrian said coldly. "They'll discover exactly how serious I am about protecting my mate and Luna. And they'll discover that Royal Omega abilities are stronger when built on genuine bonds rather than corruption," Aaron added. "I have connections to thousands of wolves across multiple territories now, connections that strengthen me rather than drain me. Any enemy who tries to attack will face unified response they can't overcome." Raina nodded slowly. "You've accomplished what I spent centuries failing to achieve. Real power, earned through connection rather than forced through domination. I hope you understand how extraordinary that is." As Raina retreated back to her supervised quarters, Aaron reflected on how much had changed. She'd gone from invisible Omega to High Luna. From someone who believed she was weak to someone who'd reshaped territorial politics through abilities that terrified and inspired in equal measure. But beneath all the titles and responsibilities, she was still the same wolf who'd fought to protect children she didn't know. Still the same person who believed pack bonds were sacred, that genuine connection mattered more than dominance, that strength came from unity rather than isolation. "Ready to go home?" Adrian asked. "Yes." Aaron took his hand, their mate bond humming with comfortable certainty. "Let's go home." As they walked back toward Silvercrest territory, surrounded by pack members who'd become family and allies who'd become friends, Aaron felt profound gratitude for the impossible journey that had led her here. She'd been told her entire life that Omegas were weak, that they existed to be protected rather than to protect others, that their only value lay in bearing children and performing simple tasks. Every part of that had been a lie. Omegas, especially Royal Omega bloodline, possessed power that surpassed simple physical strength. They could heal what others damaged, unite what others divided, build bridges that others thought impossible to construct. And Aaron intended to spend the rest of her life proving that Omega designation wasn't weakness. It was exactly the kind of strength their world needed most, the kind that built rather than destroyed, connected rather than isolated, healed rather than wounded. As the sun set over Silvercrest territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Aaron looked toward the future with hope rather than fear. She was High Luna, mate to an Alpha King, soon to be mother, Royal Omega bloodline restored after 3 centuries of genocide. But most importantly, she was exactly who she was meant to be, and she was finally, truly home. Dear viewers, we've reached the end of Erin's extraordinary journey from forgotten Omega to High Luna, who reshaped her world. But here's a question for you. If you discovered you possessed power that everyone told you was impossible, would you have the courage to embrace it, even knowing it would make you a target? Would you risk everything to become who you were truly meant to be? Erin chose her path. What would yours be? If this story moved you, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember, strength isn't always what others expect it to be.